Yes.
The Lviv Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1459 of the War News stream. And it sounds like Iran could not wait. They're getting to it today. We're seeing that Iranian forces are beginning to advance toward the Iraqi border as of right now. We're also seeing that Tehran has descended into pure chaos amid major riots. And also, Russia's been slammed yet again by Ukrainian missiles, causing major damage. But specifically, we have massive news out of the Middle East, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to cover the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments that have been evolving within the Middle East, Eastern Europe, East Asia, Western Europe, and also the East Coast of the United States of America over just the past 24 hours, as we have seen and are able to report on significant developments inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, as large elements of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian Armed Forces are now beginning to forward deploy within the area of Western Iran near to the Iraqi border. These sorts of movements are highly indicative of some sort of a preparatory action by the Islamic Republic of Iran for preemptive strikes or a preparation for counterattacks or counterstrikes against Israel and the United States of America here within the coming days. Very similar actions such as these were seen before the Iranians conducted a rocket barrage and drone attack on Israel in 2024 and also in 2025 during the 12-day war. We've been able to note at the same time that the United States of America has been conducting the largest airlifts, which we've been saying day over day, but today is now the largest day of airlifts that has been seen within a 24-hour period, with dozens of C-17s, C-5 Galaxies, and KC-135 Stratotankers flying out in almost a World War II era bomber swarm formation over the area of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and on into Yukon and then further into CENTCOM. Currently, the amount of basings and forces within the Middle East right now under the U.S.'s command is so large that we've actually run out of physical room to be able to house the U.S. Air Forces that are currently within the area. And we're now getting video and picture evidence of U.S. forces based in unbelievably large groupings at Chania Air Base inside of Crete in the nation of Greece, and also that the Sofia International Airport has also been closed down to all civilian traffic and is largely being used as an ad hoc military airfield at the moment by the United States Armed Forces. We've also been able to see that the Israelis are conducting as much preemptive action as they possibly can against Iranian proxies in their near proximity before these attacks begin. We have seen that overnight Israeli airstrikes were able to confirm the deaths of every single Hezbollah commander inside of the Hezbollah Missile Command, largely ensuring that their top officials who would be in charge of launching Qassam rocket strikes against northern Israel will largely be incapacitated or pushing up lilies by the time the strike begins here soon. Additionally, an E-3 Sentry has also arrived inside of the Republic of Turkey and apparently will be forward operating to gather intelligence and signals information on the Islamic Republic of Iran to further assist U.S. strikes that will be coming here within the near future. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also seen that while the U.S. is clearly on the very verge of starting the war with Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran is now dealing with an unprecedented amount of civil unrest, very similar to what we saw back in early January. As a matter of fact, even with the Iranian government firing into the crowds due to the IRGC and the Besiegers armed forces, it appears that this time, this is not dissuading Iranian protesters and rebels, and they are attempting to continue to keep their forces strong within the streets and continue to show the Iranian government that they will not stand for the continued injustices and the continued poor management that the Islamic Republic of Iran's government has been able to continue over the past few months since the massacres in early January. We've also been able to see that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still trying their hardest to be able to fortify the area around the Strait of Hormuz in preparation of the requirement that the Iranians most likely have to mine the Strait of Hormuz if a larger war with the United States of America begins. The Islamic Republic of Iran has announced a new anti-ship missile of their own indigenous design, leading us to believe that it's probably not that capable, and we've also been able to hear that Cobra 8 electronic warfare systems have also been deployed around the Strait of Hormuz to be able to try and conduct counter-electronic warfare in the advent if the United States tries to conduct electronic warfare within this area and then start to conduct suppression of enemy air defense system tactics. The United States of America's Abraham Lincoln is still currently on station within the Arabian Sea, and we've also been able to hear that inside of Afghanistan, the Pakistani Air Force has now been conducting airstrikes against Taliban forces within the border regions just southeast of Kabul. This appears to be a continuation of the ongoing tensions that exist between the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan under Taliban control, but does not appear to be largely in line or really working towards the situation inside the Middle East right now as it pertains between Israel, the United States, and Iran. The People's Republic of China has also been mentioned to be preparing new nuclear weapons and also attempting to conduct secret nuclear tests, according to multiple statements from U.S. officials and also intelligence agencies who have spoken on the matter, at least over the past day. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that in the United States of America, it appears that the Artemis mission to return to the moon has unfortunately been postponed once again, and instead of the launch happening in March, it will now be happening in April. Outside of that, the United States of America is also continuing on with other major announcements and developments, at least within the U.S. government, and we have also been able to hear, moving us on into the European regions, and specifically within Eastern Europe, that the United States of America has unveiled, in one of the first times ever, at least in a public release, photographs of the long-range hypersonic weapon system, a system that most of the U.S. public does not even know that the United States Army even is currently in possession of. It is the first Mach 5 Plus hypersonic weapon that the United States Army's ground artillery batteries or strategic rocket batteries have ever used or operated in the entirety of their history. These pictures were briefly published online today by the Department of Defense, and then they were taken down almost within that very hour. But it's still...
I think it might have been an accidental release, actually, because that was kind of weird how they took it down. They took it down within, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. They had that post off the internet, so I think that might have been accidental.
But we were able to get the pictures, and they go hard. And also, it is some of the very few pictures outside of, I think, about the 5 to 10 that we have currently in the public, letting us look at least the TEL for the long-range hypersonic weapon, which was quite impressive. We also were able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces have been conducting significant bombardments of the Russian Federation overnight, with large amounts of drone attacks, largely sweeping the entire area south of Moscow and all the way to the Ural Mountains, with large amounts of factories, oil refineries, and oil storage sites on fire as of this moment due to the attacks and the damage that they caused. We also saw that the Ukrainian armed forces are still retaking ground within the area of the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia Oblast front lines, and the Ukrainian armed forces are still seeing a significant amount of progress. However, unfortunately, an explosion has occurred in Lviv today, which has been declared by the governor of the Lviv Oblast as a terrorist attack. Currently, the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian police are conducting a full investigation into this incident, which did claim the lives of several Ukrainian citizens and largely appears to be some form of a terrorist attack inside of Ukraine, although the actual state actor or non-state actor which conducted the attack is largely unknown, unfortunately, at the moment. But we are going to be making sure to get into all of this news, including the absolutely major news that's coming out of the Middle East, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on into the smaller stories throughout the night. I do have to say, folks, that we are still largely on the very cusp of a full outbreak of war inside the Middle East right now, and Enforcer HQ is on high alert. I want to make it incredibly clear to everyone at the beginning of the show tonight that over these next few days, even including Monday when we're technically off air, we will be on high alert here at Enforcer HQ, sitting at our computers on standby all day, waiting for any sort of military action to commence on Iran. As soon as it happens, we will be going live immediately. But before we even get into all of the news that we have lined up for us tonight, we actually have breaking news that's evolving right now at this moment on air. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have breaking news happening right as we start out of the Middle East. Enforcer, bring us to Flight Radar 24 real quick, because I'm currently getting some information from a source in the Middle East right now that is claiming that the reason why there's been a last-minute wave of U.S. air defense equipment transfers, which is allegedly what is on these flights, these cargo flights out of the United States tonight, are apparently going to the region because they've apparently got new intelligence that Iran plans to attack U.S. and Israeli embassies in the region, not just the U.S. air bases. They plan to attack the embassies themselves, and we're hearing from sources that apparently this has panicked the Western officials, and that's why they're bringing in this last-minute air defense on these flights. So that's a pretty big announcement there. We do know that Iran was going to retaliate, probably in the extreme, but it sounds like they're going to go all the way, hitting embassies, air bases, and pretty much anything they can try to hit. So that's a pretty big story. That's apparently why we're seeing this last-minute deployment tonight.
And that is quite interesting to hear, and it does appear that, at least at the moment, folks, we are now hearing that the Islamic Republic of Iran, either in a preemptive first strike to try and beat the United States to the punch, or in a counterstrike after the U.S. starts conducting airstrikes on Iran, is apparently now not only going to target military facilities throughout the Middle East housing U.S. forces, including Muwafaq Air Base in Jordan, the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, and also possibly the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, although that facility has been evacuated effective at this point. It also appears that they're going to be attempting to attack U.S. embassies throughout the entirety of the region. We do not know if that will include U.S. consulates, which also exist in somewhat larger numbers throughout the area, but the United States does have existent and operational embassies within most every country inside the Middle East. You would find U.S. embassies, or at least the head embassies of most of the United States inside of Riyadh, Baghdad, the city of Kuwait City within the Kingdom of Kuwait, the city of Amman in Jordan, and many others throughout the area. As a matter of fact, there is even a U.S. embassy at this point that is now back up into operational capacity in Damascus to some limited extent inside of the new interim Syrian governmental territory and its zone of control. So it does appear that at the moment, the Iranians are now largely threatening not only to attack U.S. bases or U.S. forces based at facilities throughout the Middle East, but they're also threatening to attack national capitals of most every Middle Eastern country if the United States conducts an attack, as these embassies are usually, if not always, within the capital of the countries that we currently are speaking to in a diplomatic form. We also have even further breaking news coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, and this is a real quick piece of breaking news. We actually have a second one. That's kind of crazy this early in the stream. Already a second piece of breaking news. So we had heard earlier today that there was airstrikes conducted by Pakistan into Afghanistan on the Taliban. We're now hearing reports that apparently border clashes are now breaking out between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this a very early report, by the way. We don't have any footage of it yet. I'm sure we'll get that before the stream's out. But we're hearing reports apparently of some pretty strong border clashes. Apparently the Taliban is retaliating against the Pakistanis for those airstrikes. So already some crazy stuff happening this early.
So now we're able to confirm right when we went on air as well, folks. We will be talking about this a little bit later on in the stream, at least in a lot more detail. But the airstrikes that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan has conducted on the Emirate of Afghanistan earlier today has now resulted in another border war, as we're now apparently hearing that Taliban and Pakistani forces are conducting armed infantry clashes along the border, at least in some key areas, which leads us to believe that this will probably become another extended border war, much like the last one that might last several weeks, between the Taliban and the Pakistanis. So quite an interesting development. We're apparently hearing about a smaller war breaking out right now between the Taliban and Pakistan. So fairly interesting to say the least, and right when we're going on air nonetheless. We'll be making sure to get into that a little bit later, and we'll also be giving y'all any updates that we can get on any of these stories and situations as they happen live on air once we're able to get them. So, of course, if at any given moment Matthew starts putting breaking news in the chat, we're most likely going to have to stop our ongoing coverage of what's happened over the whole day and get to what's happening immediately right now. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into the news that we have over the past 24 hours, which I cannot say at the least was the absolutely major news of the day. Moving us into the Middle East, we were able to hear over the course of the day that the Islamic Republic of Iran's armed forces are now beginning to conduct heavy movements near to the Iraqi border. From what we've been able to hear, according to Channel 12, B&O News, and others, it does appear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is moving a significant amount of its armed forces, most likely strategic rocket forces, into the western part of their country, near to the Iraqi border. These areas are generally only seen to be heavily militarized when there is some sort of a plan by the Islamic Republic of Iran to conduct significant rocket and drone attacks against other countries or forces within the Middle East, including that of the State of Israel and U.S.-based forces throughout the entirety of the region. This is giving us a fairly good indication that at the moment the Islamic Republic of Iran is already pre-deploying rocket forces and also support forces for those rocket forces into Western Iran to be able to prepare for a larger attack on the Israelis and the United States Armed Forces that are within the region. Considering that news has just come out that the Iranians are apparently now heavily considering an attack on U.S. embassies throughout the region as well, which would largely entail attacks on Al Udeid, Bahrain, Kuwait City, Riyadh, the city of Abu Dhabi, as well as Baghdad, Damascus, and Amman. Not only that, also including Jerusalem, where the U.S. embassy is currently at. This now means that the United States is in a rush at this moment to bring in further air defense forces to be able to try and defend not only the military facilities that we're currently operating out of in the area, but also our embassies in these multiple countries where they are currently operating. Right now, we have not been able to hear of any evacuation of diplomatic staff from the embassies or consulates inside of these countries, but it does appear that that will probably be happening incredibly soon, especially if our intelligence currently is highly credible that the Iranians are now planning to conduct attacks on those, along with the U.S. military bases that are within the region. We've also been able to see that this news was corroborated by other news sources just to make sure that we have additional backup statements from this. We also were able to see that according to other statements, the IRGC is advancing equipment towards the Iraqi border. I do want to make it clear that the type of equipment and the force deployments that we're seeing within Western Iran are not an army or a ground invasion force to start marching into Iraq. It is very much likely, considering the historical precedent that we've gotten over the past 3 years for this, that it is transport-erector launchers and other vehicles that support the transport-erector launchers that will be launching the rockets and drones at the State of Israel and U.S. armed forces within the region. These sorts of force deployments are always heard of before the Iranians start conducting attacks. In 2024, after the Israelis conducted an airstrike which killed the Hezbollah leader Nasrallah inside of Beirut, Lebanon, we saw that the Iranians began to deploy a large amount of their transport-erector launchers and support forces into the western part of their country. Right after that, we then saw that the Iranians conducted a major rocket and drone attack against the State of Israel, which was the first one of its type in modern history. Then after that, in 2025, before the 12-day war kicked off, we had also seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran's armed forces began to deploy in significant numbers in the western part of their country, and right after that, the Israelis conducted airstrikes throughout the entirety of Iran, and then we saw that Iranian counterattacks in the form of drone and missile launches then started to occur directly out of western Iran. This sort of an action right here is exactly identical to those two actions that we saw in 2024 and also in the 12-day war, and it's giving us a clear indication that the Iranians are already forward deploying to be able to try and conduct some sort of a massive counterattack, at least in drone and missile forces, against the U.S. and Israeli forces, and also the Israeli state that is currently within the region right now. We have also been able to see outside of that information that due to the United States apparently now hearing that the Iranians are planning on attacking embassies, an even larger amount of support forces and also anti-air defenses are being moved across the Atlantic and into the area of the Middle East as fast as availably possible. Every single one of these flights that you're seeing right here on the screen is actually a U.S. Air Force military flight. And we can see in this count alone, just over New England and also the Nova Scotia and Newfoundland area of Canada, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about 11 aircraft, including 10 C-17s and one C-5 Galaxy, that were already flying basically in a humongous formation across the Atlantic into Europe, and then they'll be jumping from Europe and on into the Middle East to go and drop off additional air defense forces throughout the area. Of course, we don't know exactly how many air defense forces are being dropped off, and exactly how competent they're going to be, and also where they're going to be. All of that would generally be an OPSEC violation. But the ADS-B transponder data of these airlift aircraft is giving us at least an idea that all of these are heading to the Middle East, and we're still seeing right now on Flight Radar 24 that there is still a decent number of flights that are making their way into or out of the Middle East as far as U.S. Air Force deployments are concerned. We've also been able to...
Also, I will say this appears to be the largest single deployment of these cargo aircraft and also stratotankers that we've seen during the entire deployment to the Middle East over the past month or so. Tonight appears to be the biggest. This is I can tell you I've been monitoring this day in and day out. I have not seen this many aircraft in the air at one single time like this. In my opinion, this would seem to back up the idea from the sources we're hearing in the Middle East that the U.S. appears to be doing a last-minute panic deployment. It seems like of air defense. Because if it is true that Iran is going to try to target embassies in the region, then that might be something that possibly the U.S. wasn't really fully prepared for. I would personally prepared for it because Iran, they really act like that. They will target embassies. I don't put that past them whatsoever. So this seems like somewhat of a panicked deployment. Just by the number of aircraft that are in the air is truly remarkable.
It does seem truly remarkable, and it is pretty impressive to note just the sheer volume of flights that is being conducted at the moment, and once again we would largely assume that this is primarily air defense forces that are being redeployed. Additionally, outside of that, we have also been able to see that U.S. force basings throughout the entirety of Europe and also close to the Middle East or within the near Middle Eastern regions are quite large as well. The U.S. has been using the Azores Islands of Portugal as a strategic refueling and also transportation hub, at least recently, with a large amount of KC-46 Pegasus tankers currently based at some of the airfields within the Azores, and apparently from what we understand, they are only using the Azores as a refueling hub. So when U.S. aircraft are flying over the area, say C-17s or whatnot, these KC-46s take off from the Azores, orbit nearby to the area, refuel our aircraft, and then they keep trucking on into the Middle East. So largely, the Azores is currently serving as a U.S. Air Force gas station to be able to refuel our aircraft while they're still airborne and keep them on the move towards the Middle East, largely not even letting them stop at this point inside of Europe and greatly reducing the amount of time that it takes for a U.S. aircraft to make it from the United States of America within NORTHCOM and all the way over into CENTCOM, basically without end. We have also been able to see that the amount of forces that the United States has physically within the Middle East right now has become so large, and we can only assume that this is the reason why this is happening, is that the U.S. force deployments in the Middle East are so large that most Middle Eastern nations that host U.S. forces have physically run out of room to put them there. And for this reason, we're now seeing that the U.S. has now expanded into asking nations like Greece and Bulgaria to be able to allow for U.S. armed forces to be able to base out of their facilities instead. Greece and Bulgaria, along with Turkey, are about the closest that the United States Armed Forces, or the United States Air Force specifically, can get to the Middle East without being in the Middle East. And considering that the Middle East is currently run out of room, and they don't really have any more rooms to sell, or more so rooms to let at the moment for the United States, it appears that we're having to move on to more creative solutions. For example, basing a large amount of the combat aviation power that's now been moved into the area into the Chania Air Base inside of Crete. And we were actually able to see some fairly interesting videos come out of that over the course of the day, and also out of the Republic of Turkey as well. But before we get on into that, I do want to talk about this major force deployment that we're now hearing from the Islamic Republic of Iran within the western area of their airspace, or more so within the western part of their country. And it seems as though a lot of people are talking about what they think this means, or what this might be resulting in here in the near future. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this is a brand new deployment by the IRGC. We are seeing a very large number of Iranian forces moving toward the Iraqi border, and nobody's really sure why this is. There's a lot of speculation about it, but nobody's really certain. So why do you think that the Iranians are suddenly making this move at the final hour? And 31% said that the U.S. is preparing a ground invasion of Iran, and that's why Iran is now sending forces to the border to get ready for that invasion, while 28% said it's simply a strategic relocation of the launchers of the Iranian military, and 26% said Iran plans to invade or enter Iraq, which would be quite insane, by the way. I would say personally, I think it's a strategic relocation. I'm with the 28%. I don't think the U.S. is preparing a ground invasion. We have not seen any evidence that that is the case. We've not seen those deployments. So I don't think ground action is currently in the books for U.S. forces. I think it's mainly going to be airstrikes and maybe possibly limited raids. But even the raids are a little bit questionable at the moment. So I think they are strategically relocating their missile launchers to get them in a more advantageous position, basically to get them physically closer to striking Israel and also other targets in the Middle East. I don't think Iran would ever invade Iraq. That would be probably beyond their capabilities and also very unwise, because then they're on the move and they're vulnerable to U.S. airstrikes. So I would doubt that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that the Islamic Republic of Iran is basing forces within the western part of their country, probably to prepare for some form of strikes against the state of Israel and U.S. forces within the region here within the near future. That would seem to be the most obvious sort of an answer that at least I could give at the moment, as we have seen very similar deployments such as these during the 12-day war and also during 2024 when the Islamic Republic of Iran was trying to conduct attacks against Israel and U.S. forces within the area during those periods of time. So I'd heavily believe that at least at the moment, that is the high likelihood of the case, is that they are trying to make sure to prepare their forces, at least rocket forces at a minimum, for those attacks to be able to be conducted against Israel and the United States. And so with that in mind, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And we are actually going to be moving on from that little bit of analysis and on into the next part of our news, which moves us on largely still within the Middle East and on into the area of the Near East inside of the Mediterranean. Currently, we do understand that U.S. armed forces have begun to generally max out the available space within countries that are willing to host U.S. forces inside the Middle East. And for this reason, we've had to become a little bit more creative and look around and abroad for the most part to be able to try and find ourselves something along the lines that might help us out to some minimum extent in trying to get in a little bit of a tiny bit of a better situation and having enough combat air power available to be able to conduct the actions that we need to conduct. Now, moving us on into the area of Crete, this is one that is wildly interesting to me. It's very rare for the U.S. for the U.S. Air Force, for that matter, to base heavily out of Bulgaria and Greece, and the only reason that we believe they're doing that right now is to prepare for the strikes against Iran. And we were able to see this video that came out today on Instagram, that was TikTok, Instagram, I'm not really sure, but it was a fairly interesting one because it actually showed us what was on the ground at the Chania Air Base. And the reason why we're showing this, folks, is because due to the fact that there is still civilian aviation taking off and landing from the Chania Air Base, apparently this has not been considered to be a major operational security threat for these aircraft to be seen and generally displayed. And so for that reason, it appears that we are able to show this, at least at the moment. If the Chania Air Base or the Chania Airport near Chania and Crete does get closed, then this would become sensitive information, but for now, it doesn't appear to be. But we were able to see some A-10 Warthogs sitting out there on the tarmac.
Now, isn't that something right there, the A-10? You know, the military always says, oh, we're going to retire those A-10s. They're going in the garbage can, basically. They'll be scrapped and they'll be done with. But yet, here they are, still sitting right here, ready to use. Kind of interesting with that, by the way. Also, I wanted to point something else out before I forget. I have heard rumors that the reason why they're currently using Crete as a stationing point for these aircraft is because of the ongoing dispute with the UK over using Diego Garcia. I'm not totally sure if that's the exact reason they're using Crete, but it seems plausible at least, because I think that's still an ongoing dispute about the UK not giving the US permission to station forces out of Diego Garcia, at least from what I've heard.
And it does appear that that might be the case, but we were able to see that these A-10s were based on the tarmac, along with the C-17. We then saw that there was a large number of F-35s, we would assume they're F-35As of the U.S. Air Force, that are also based here as well, along with the C-130 that may have brought its supporting crews and ground repair teams with the F-35 wing. We also saw some aerial tankers like this KC-46 Pegasus. We saw even more F-35s, another KC-46, another C-17, another large group of F-35s, and a C-130, and we also were able to see even larger amounts of forces, but also a civilian airliner right there. It appears that the United States has become such a large force within the Middle East that we're now having to expand out of the Middle East, and it reminds me of that brother, may I have some oats meme, but it's more so about the U.S. asking any other country within the Middle East if they have an airfield to spare. maybe this meme touches some people quite greatly. I do love the brother may I have some oats meme. Maybe you'll also appreciate it as well. I was doing this literally in the midst of actually yapping for about the past 10 minutes, was trying to get this little meme put together, so I hope that it is a little bit funny. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from that, and we are going to be moving on into our news that we were able to hear out of the Republic of Turkey, as we were able to see that an E-3 Sentry of the U.S. Air Force has started to move towards the area of the Konya Air Base inside of Turkey. It seems as though at the moment, the United States is moving this E-3 Sentry into the area to be able to try and prepare for intelligence gathering and signals intelligence gathering on the Islamic Republic of Iran to be able to help out with U.S. strikes that are going to be happening here within the near future. I would have to be honest with y'all, I do not know when these strikes are going to begin. They can happen at any minute now. The U.S. forces are poised and ready for strikes starting today. The U.S. naval stations at Bahrain and also the airbase at Al Adid has completely evacuated, meaning that strikes could happen at any moment, and U.S. forces are far enough away that they would be able to defend themselves easily and safely. So, of course, we don't really know when it's going to be happening right now, but it could be any day now. Nevertheless, the U.S. is trying to gather as much final last-minute intelligence as they can, and it does appear that there will be a decent amount of information that this E-3 Sentry might be able to gather in the meantime. It also appears that due to the fact that this aircraft is basing out of the Konya Air Base in Turkey, the Turks might be giving some level of support to the United States of America in the impending military operations that are soon to follow against Iran. We've also seen that the Israelis seem to believe at the moment that the United States, or largely their own attacks, have now been postponed, apparently, according to Ynet. We've also seen that while the Israelis are generally believing that attacks have been postponed for now, the Israelis have not postponed their attacks on Hezbollah. And last night, they literally wiped out the entirety of the Hezbollah missile command all in one night. The RIP t-shirts are going hard at the Hezbollah merch store, but it appears that over the course of the entire night, all 8 of the Hezbollah missile array command staff were all killed in Israeli airstrikes, generally showing that Israel is specifically targeting the parts of the Hezbollah armed forces that would be able to conduct some form of a rocket attack against the Israelis with their smaller homemade Qassam rockets. And for that reason, this will be heavily throwing off the Hezbollah forces and an ability to be able to counteract and also respond to the Israeli and U.S. attacks against Iran that are coming in the near future. There is a strong belief, at least right now, that Hezbollah actually will get involved and will attempt to help Iran overwhelm Israeli air defenses in the midst of a full-scale war with Iran. So the Israelis apparently are trying to preempt that by making sure nobody who would fire a Hezbollah rocket will be left alive before these attacks can even be thought of beginning or commencing by Hezbollah forces. We've also been able to see that, however, some rocket activity was detected in Lebanon in recent days, but I believe that at this point they might have dispatched most of that threat, considering that they basically killed everyone who's in charge of the missile array command inside of the Hezbollah armed forces in Lebanon. Moving on out of that news concerning Israel, we've also been able to hear that within the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranians are still, and I mean still, trying to put their best foot forward with making themselves look like a major threat to the United States and any other forces that may be conducting actions against them here in the near future. The Iranians have actually announced, apparently, that they've now gotten a new anti-ship missile. The Revolutionary Guards announced on Saturday the launch of the first Sayad 3G naval defense missile and its entry into operational service. This occurred during a military maneuver carried out by the IRGC naval force in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a part of Operation Control the Strait, which is still ongoing at this moment. This was, of course, near large U.S. military forces, including the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which is currently about 200 miles away inside the Arabian Sea. The Tasnim News Agency, which is affiliated with the terrorist organization, has reported that it is a 150-kilometer missile capable of creating a regional air defense umbrella for the terrorist organization's naval weapons. So apparently the Iranians are trying to say that they have some sort of a magic missile that can only reach about 110 miles, and if we're taking the idea that it's a naval defense missile, that means it's built to go up against ships, but the thing only has about a 110-mile range. Now, I've got to tell y'all up front, nobody is going to be getting within 110 miles of the coast of Iran in the middle of this war, so this thing is basically pointless and completely obsolete off the bat. They won't even be able to reach the U.S. Navy where they're actually going to be operating out of, which is going to be a little bit farther out and in the Arabian Sea. So this missile is completely pointless. They also then stated that it was a regional air defense umbrella, which then brings the question, is this a naval defense missile or an air defense missile? They don't really clarify that, at least according to the Iranian agencies that came out today. So the Iranians are even confused about what the missile is, whether it's an air defense missile or an anti-ship missile, which would be a naval defense missile. They really don't seem to know all too much about that. But I do believe that this missile stack could pose a threat to literally anybody. With that, in an air engagement scenario, a 110-mile range for an air defense missile is pretty decent. That's about the same range as a PAC-2 for the Patriot missile defense system. But for an anti-ship missile, 110 miles is woefully inadequate. That wouldn't reach anyone in the modern day and age. That wouldn't have reached anyone even about 50 years ago back in the 70s. But moving on from that, we've also seen the Iranians are trying to fortify their counter-electronic warfare systems inside of the Strait of Hormuz as well, as a satellite picture today actually did show that the Iranians did deploy this Connex box, which is a Cobra V8 electronic warfare system. They say it's electronic warfare because it puts out AI slop every second, which is an incredible sort of a thing and will rot the brains out of basically any well-minded American or any international citizen of any country from around the world that is an Iranian with their cheap and crappy propaganda. But the reality of this is that the reason why they're putting this out here, all jokes aside, is to be able to try and conduct counter-electronic warfare against the United States near to the Strait of Hormuz and elsewhere. This is something that would be fairly important for Iran, especially if they want to give their air defenses at least a minimum chance of survival at the opening of the onslaught that's to follow, because by conducting this electronic warfare or counter-electronic warfare, they may be able to mess with the electromagnetic frequencies of the computer systems on board the suppression of enemy air defense aircraft like the FA-18s, the F-16s, or even the F-35s, and make it a little bit more difficult for them to lock on to an Iranian air defense radar and fire off at them. It is also likely that these things could go out of their way to be destroyed as well, considering if they're on and active, it is most likely going to be the case that they will be targeted and found by the U.S. somewhat quickly. We also understand that most of our enemies' electronic warfare and electronics and computer systems are not as advanced or fine-tuned as ours here in the West, so that generally means that it might actually be ineffective by the time we actually end up going against this thing in a full-blown conflict. So we'll have to generally wait and see how well does the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy deal with these things once we have to start dealing with them, and we'll find out. But moving on out of that, and out of the Strait of Hormuz area, we have been able to also get further confirmation that it appears that the USS Abraham Lincoln is still operating within the Northern Arabian Sea, and one of the MH-60s on board the Lincoln, or on board one of its Arleigh Burke escorts, is apparently conducting some sort of a search pattern earlier in the day to be able to try and possibly find something. We don't know what they're looking for, but it does once again indicate that the carrier strike group is somewhere out there within the Northern Arabian Sea, just lurking around waiting for the moment to be given the order to start strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran. But before we move on to that, before we move on into the internal news that is inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, I do have to point out something that is a little interesting here. Apparently, the Iranian Foreign Ministry is going back to the exact same thing that they said right before the talks in Geneva. Before the talks in Geneva, the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, actually stated that the United States was going to allow the Islamic Republic of Iran's uranium enrichment to continue to some extent, or largely entirely. It then was found out that after the talks began and ended in Geneva, that was never the case, and now it appears that the Iranians are now stating that the U.S. has accepted Iran's demand to continue uranium enrichment, according to a diplomat cited by Iran's Students News Agency. Talks in Geneva reportedly ruled out a full halt to enrichment. Instead, negotiations focused on technical limits, such as where enrichment happens, at what level, and how many centrifuges Iran can use. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed the U.S. did not seek zero enrichment, saying both sides wanted a quick deal. Although no one's ever agreed to a deal at this point, which makes me believe that they're not really wanting a quick deal. The discussions come as the president increases military pressure and is considering possible strikes if no agreement is reached soon. And both sides are stating that progress has been made, but no date is set for the next round of talks. At the moment, this appears like a load of malarkey to me, but what do y'all think about it? And Matthew, what do you think about it as well?
Okay, so this is the claim coming from Iran, by the way. So take that for what you will. It's coming from a government that loves to lie. They love to lie like it's going out of style. So they're claiming that the U.S. has agreed to allow nuclear enrichment to continue, and the talks are back on. And apparently, the U.S. is being a lot more lenient with Iran. So what are your thoughts? 45% said Iran is very likely lying about the whole situation. 32% said it's merely a U.S. stalling tactic, making it seem like the talks are still ongoing. And 14% said the U.S. still really wants a deal, and they're being serious about this. So everybody around the president, by the way, is pretty much calling for strikes on Iran. So I would highly doubt the president's going to back out of this. This has been something that he's been stating for a long time, that he's going to go after Iran, and he actually did it during Midnight Hammer. So this is not going to be one of those situations where there's like a bunch of like nerves and, cold feet. This is going to happen. And also the deployments backed it up as well. So I think Iran is very likely lying about the whole situation. I'm with the 45%. Iran is probably doing this as propaganda to make it seem to their people that there's maybe a hope on the horizon and maybe all hope's not lost. So I would say this isn't even true. Like, it sounds like a load of BS and malarkey to me, and I don't buy it. But Enforcer, what say you?
This sounds like an absolute load of malarkey to me. There's never been any proof to the Iranian claims along this line before the Geneva talks or after the Geneva talks. It seems the United States is more than willing to continue on with the line of thinking or the idea that Iran will have absolutely no nuclear program whatsoever. And we also understand that even if the United States was willing to allow Iran to have some form of a nuclear program that didn't produce a nuclear weapon, Iran has openly shown through the talks in Muscat, Oman, and Geneva, Switzerland, just over the past month, and also all of the talks that were had last year, that they're not willing to accept that. And they believe that nuclear enrichment to any percentage is a national right and a sovereign responsibility of the Islamic Republic of Iran as they continue to work forward on producing a nuclear weapon. So I would say that this whole statement is a load of BS for sure, and there's really no other way to look at it rather than that. But moving on out of our news inside of the diplomatic circle in the Islamic Republic of Iran, we've also been able to hear that Iran today has now decided to try and do a no-you and an Uno reverse on the European Union, which did just declare the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps several days ago as a terrorist force, and now the Iranian Foreign Ministry has designated all EU naval and air forces as terrorist organizations. So I don't know what that's supposed to really amount to, but, I guess they did that. I don't know. They just do what they do. Moving on out of that, we've also been able to see that while the Iranians are trying to save face and basically just say no you to the Europeans after they declared a literal terrorist force a terrorist force, then Iran pulled out but you forget, Habibi, that the French Navy is truly a terrorist force with how they go around the world eating garlic and onions everywhere. What? It's like, how in the, I don't even know how in the hell, it's like in Iran, I guess whoever calls them a terrorist gets called a terrorist in return. There's just no, actual reasoning to it. It's like, is France, Germany, the UK, or Poland a terrorist force? No, because they don't fund a whole bunch of groups to just go around bombing people. You don't hear of, the French separatist movement, say, bombing something in the United States. You will hear about something in the Middle East, though, Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Houthis attacking and sinking a merchant ship just minding its own business. It's that's really the difference between non-terrorist forces and terrorist forces. And I don't really think the Iranians are getting that whole thing. But while they're not getting that whole side of things, the Islamic Republic of Iran is dealing with pretty bad situations on the home front, as it does appear that unrest, general protests, and also uprisings are once again occurring in large scale across the entirety of the country. Within Tehran today, at least in the southern area of the city, we were also able to see that the besiege is now clashing with students from the Sharif University of Technology in Tehran, where we can now see that a large part of the student body is once again in open revolt against the Iranian government and is ongoing in a protest currently. And we can see that in this clip right here. Additionally,
kind of interesting they're doing that inside of Tehran, because the Iranians had literally just deployed forces inside the capital city. They locked down, in fact, I believe it was the northeastern part of the city, if I have that correct. They sent a bunch of security forces in there. So that's pretty brave for the students to be out in the midst of that.
It is pretty brave for them to be out in the midst of that, and it doesn't appear that they're alone. We were able to see another student uprising that had also occurred within Mashhad, Iran today as well, which we have in this clip right here. We see smoke rising from some corners of the streets as the large crowds of students appear to be creating some sort of a demonstration and even stopping traffic. And once again chanting anti-Iranian regime chants. We also got another clip of this as well right here. very interesting to note. It doesn't really seem as though Mashhad and Tehran, which are the two largest cities within the nation, are peaceful and generally in line with the Iranian government's objectives and prerogatives at the moment. We've also seen that further on down and within the area of the city of Marmuri, which I believe is within the area of the, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it is the Elam province. That's what it is. I'm sorry, I had to go find the seat of the province, which is Elam. But within the Elam province, we were able to see within Marmuri that there were a large amount of protests that were also beginning to stir up within this city as well. Unfortunately, all of them were not being seen with a great deal of success, and we already have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has started to open fire into some of the protests and the crowds that are currently ongoing within the country, and we have also been able to see that further on up within Abdanan, the IRGC and Basij actually started to open fire on the crowds. But before we get to that, I do actually hear that we're getting something over the radar right now. Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so this isn't quite breaking news, but let's check something out real quick. I do see people talking about a US P-8 Poseidon going into Iranian airspace. It's not actually in their airspace all the way, it's simply a predictive model. But there's another aircraft here, which is from the apparently the Armenian Air Force, that appears to be possibly being spoofed into Iranian airspace or something. It looks like the transponder could be on actually over the airspace. So what's up with that? The P-8's obviously, that's predictive. So the P-8's not in their airspace, but that Armenian Air Force aircraft appears to be possibly in it.
I don't really know why. That's fairly interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that, because I don't believe that the Armenians are that friendly to the Iranians, at least from what I know. I might be mistaken on that, but that is fairly interesting to note that it does appear that, at least at the moment, an Armenian Air Force IL-76 might be flying through Iranian airspace, but I also have to point out, a lot like Matthew did just a second ago, that the P-8 Poseidon is not inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is conducting orbits, or more so, I guess you could say, racetracks through the area. Oh, actually, you can see that it's starting to correct itself because the transponder has once again been detected, and it's actually still within the Strait of Hormuz. So it is not within the Islamic Republic of Iran like it was showing just a second ago. It is currently trying to conduct some maritime patrols through the Strait of Hormuz, probably to get a little bit of a better idea of what the Iranian Navy is up to around there right now, and to also try and keep an eye on the civilian shipping that's passing through this area right now, because there is still a large number of civilian ships, as you can see right here, that are passing through the southern area of the Strait of Hormuz at this moment right now, and this P-8 Poseidon is generally flying right in between them and the exclusionary zone that has been declared by the Iranians around the islands of Hormuz and Lorak, which are just south of the city of Bandar Abbas. So, fairly
Look at that. Look at that Armenian plane, though. I mean, it keeps changing its heading. Like, it's even moving around. That's not normal for predictive flight paths. That's kind of abnormal. So I would assume that there might be some type of spoofing or something going on here, possibly. That seems to be very possible to me, because I mean, look at the jagged flight path it was taking, like down there below, and also it's currently taking another jagged flight path where it's at now. So that's not indicative of a prediction. That's indicative of a transponder either being spoofed or perhaps it's turning on and off frequently, and maybe it's trying to predict some of it, but it appears to be actually reporting inside their airspace, possibly.
That is fairly interesting, and it does, it's generally flying in a straight line, but in a very intoxicated way. Like, this would be how a drunk person would fly a plane in a straight line if they were flying it. So it might be a spoof, it might not be. We'll generally have to see, but for now we can't really get any further detail than it looks like it's in Iran, and it's kind of flying erratically, but it is at a fairly high altitude. It's at 28,000 feet, so we'll keep an eye on that and see if anything happens to it. You know, if we see a plume of smoke in Iran, we'll get an idea of what happened. But moving on out of that interesting news right there, and back into our actual news coverage that we do have from inside the Islamic Republic of Iran today from the ongoing civil unrest, we were able to see that, unfortunately, within the city of Abdanan, the IRGC and Basij forces are once again beginning to fire into the protesters and the crowds within this area, once again showing that the Iranians have already returned to the massacring of protesters and innocent civilians involved in open dissent and petition against the government at this point in time. Here's the clip. We see folks running after the gunfire had started. And we can actually hear the gunfire down the street. Ooh.
That's a lot of gunfire.
It is. And apparently it's going into the backs of the protesters that were making a run for it. Now we can see this car trying to get down the street. We can also see something smoking up here, but it looks like they're trying to hide the camera to not raise suspicion of what they're doing, which is filming them. We see some of the smoke left over. You see them trying to drive on through. And that's the end of the clip, but still a fairly interesting and unfortunate thing to see, but once again showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still conducting crimes against humanity against the citizens of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is an unfortunate tragedy to say the least. A lot of people are noticing, however, that these have once again been going on for a couple of days, and unlike the last time, these are being met immediately on day one with the IRGC and the besieged opening fire into the crowds and striking and killing protesters at will. It seems as though that while that's been happening for about 2 to 3 days now, these protests aren't really dying off. If anything, they're staying fairly resilient and are popping up in even larger parts of the country once again. And this is starting to lead a lot of people to wonder what's going to be happening next, considering that they aren't really going back into hiding like they did the last time. And are they going to start erupting into even far larger protests? Are we going to start striking the Iranians, or is something else going to happen altogether? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now that we're seeing the footage showing the Iranian forces being attacked in Tehran by the protesters, and Tehran being the capital, that's obviously the most focused on place where the protests are happening. We're also seeing them happen in several other cities as well. Some of the largest cities in Iran are also having protests, mainly by young people at universities, and we're still seeing the ongoing protest instead of Abdanan, which is where we see the gunfire breaking out from the security forces firing at the civilians. So what is likely to happen next? 50% said protests will likely erupt much larger despite the gunfire, and 23% said Iran will probably wipe them all out soon and they'll go right back to those atrocities, and 19% said the U.S. strike is coming soon and will distract the Iranian forces from taking out the protesters. So I'll be honest, I'm a little bit shocked. I'm a little bit shocked to see so many people coming back out, and my hunch is they're probably getting word, probably the open source intelligence is making its way to the Iranian people, and they know that strikes appear to be around the corner. So in their minds, they're thinking it's time to get back out there and get back to work, because once the strikes start, that's their perfect opportunity to go and take over the government. So I have a feeling that the protests likely will erupt much larger, but the U.S. needs to hurry up, because if the Iranians start wiping the people out again, they're naturally going to go back inside, and then once the strikes actually do take place, the protesters might have their spirit broken at that point. So hopefully strikes are around the corner. The protesters are probably waiting on that, and I suspect that they'll get much larger. Some with the 49%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with 49%. I believe that the protests will erupt much larger here within the near future. They seem to be gaining momentum once again, and as long as U.S. airstrikes are conducted in a timely fashion this time around, the IRGC and the besieged really will not have the ability to gather in the streets and start firing into the crowds and massacring tens of thousands of people like they did the last time. So hopefully we will see that that is the case, and both of these things end up reaching their head at the exact same time, because the U.S. airstrikes will actually be able to create an atmosphere of lawlessness to a degree inside of Iran that will actually be beneficial to these protesters gaining even further momentum due to the complete vacuum of any sort of internal government control, due to the fact if anyone from the government peers their head out of a bunker, they're most likely going to get it taken off by a JDAM. So these might end up growing much larger here within the near future, and hopefully we'll see that that is the case. But with that in mind, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we are hearing inside the Islamic Republic of Iran right now. And before we move on out of the area of the Middle East, or at least kind of like the near proximity, I do want to bring y'all over into Central Asia for a little bit of a minute, because we've actually been able to see some wildly interesting developments that happened in between Afghanistan and Pakistan today. A lot of people always look at a large amount of these countries as pretty much friends with each other. A lot of people always view, at least here within America, that all Islamic countries are great friends with each other and they sing kumbaya around the campfires and all that. Not really the case. A lot of them actually hate each other. Afghanistan hates Iran. Iran hates Afghanistan, Afghanistan hates Pakistan, Iran hates Saudi Arabia hates Iran, Iraq hates Kuwait, Kuwait hates Iraq. That's got very significant recent historical reasons for that. The UAE hates the Saudis hate the UAE. I mean, basically everyone down there hates everyone. But specifically between Afghanistan and Pakistan, they really hate each other, and it's for a specific reason. Since the Taliban is taking control of Afghanistan, there's this group of people who generally live within the Kandahar region and also within southeast Iran and also within southwest Pakistan called the Balochistan people. And these people have an independence movement that largely is considered and has been designated a terrorist organization by most everyone in the world. They are basically like the Al-Qaeda of their own ethnic group. These people are, however, supported by the Taliban, and they base their forces inside of Taliban-controlled territory in Afghanistan and then just wander across the border, conduct attacks in Pakistan, and then run back across the border so that way the Pakistanis can't strike them. This has been creating humongous tensions between the Pakistanis and the Afghans ever since the Taliban took control back in 2021, and this has come to the head now twice, one of those times being tonight, another time being just last year, when this also turned into straight-up firefights and airstrikes by the Pakistanis against the Taliban, and the Taliban then returned in kind its own firefights on the ground, although they have no air force to speak of. We were able to see that earlier today there were more airstrikes that the Pakistanis did conduct on Pakistan, and we did get some very small clips of this. Afghanistan doesn't really have an ability to upload clips as much as any other country does, so these are seldom few clips that we have, but still showing the size of the airstrikes that did happen by the Pakistanis today against Afghanistan. Something else right there. I mean, something a little bit kind of coming out of the woodworks, honestly. That's also a duplicate of the same clip. And then we were also able to hear that apparently Taliban air defense was firing at Pakistani drones overhead, which we could see in this clip.
Is this a Taliban filming this, or like somebody inside of Afghanistan?
This is the Taliban, apparently.
Oh, damn. Apparently they didn't do a good job of the air defense.
I think just due to the fact that it was like 3 tracers each per burst, I think it's a general idea that you're running low on ammo.
What happened to all that stuff we left behind? They aren't putting that stuff to work, apparently. They're sitting out here with like 3-round bursts. I don't see any real air defense going on hardly at all. So that might explain why they got smashed by the Pakistanis.
Well, Matthew, you remember that last time that we covered this whole border war and they basically like unloaded all of the ammo that we had built up in Afghanistan for 20 years in like 3 hours? You remember those clips?
Yeah, I think I do, actually.
Yeah. That's why this video looks like that today, because they don't have anything left. They basically threw it all away in the first opening hours of the last border war that they had with Pakistan, and also on top of that, a lot of the stuff is just rotted, basically, at this point. Ammunition doesn't stay good in open-air storage for 4 straight years, so most of the ammunition has been fouled. Most of all the vehicles have dry rotted at location in Bagram and elsewhere, and most of the equipment that we... like the Blackhawks that we left behind, were generally, hopped into like it was, say GTA, and then they just crashed them basically within the first 30 minutes. So there's not really a lot that's left that we left behind. If it's not small arms, like a rifle, like an M4 carbine, and maybe some ammunition that was stored properly, there really isn't much of anything left that they got from the United States at this point. So they're still the Taliban. Like, they may have changed the weapon from an AK to an M4, but they're still the Taliban in how well they're armed. The best they have is shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons and some rifles, and that's about it, even as an official government of the country.
Yeah, interesting. Also, by the way, sorry to sound distracted here. I was looking because I was like, wait a second. Is this a Chinese vessel that just showed up in the Persian Gulf?
Oh.
And it looks like we might have our first Chinese vessel in the Persian Gulf. It's not a military vessel. You know how China does it. They have these research vessels that go out that are actually, spy vessels, at least allegedly. I'm currently seeing one of them currently lurking right in the dead center of the Persian Gulf. I just reposted it, by the way. And it looks like the Chinese are trying to get themselves a front row seat to whatever's about to happen inside of Iran. It looks like they're currently lurking right off the coast.
Hai Yang Shi. Ah, look at that. Look at that. The Hai Yang Shi. A research and survey vessel. That's interesting. You know, it's really interesting as well that it seems to be literally sitting there, maybe anchored even in the middle of the place. But let me see, Matthew. I'm trying to get a picture. I actually heard that I've seen the Chinese citizens on board waiting for the strikes to happen, or at least the Chinese PLA forces that are on board waiting for the strikes to happen. And I heard that they look something like this.
Oh man, I feel like the Chinese are really doing the Iranians dirty because you remember the Chinese had promised to show up with the Russians and to do these joint drills with Iran. It turns out China chickened out completely. They didn't send any naval vessels at all, and Russia was the only country that actually did the drills with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. Now we're seeing that China actually did apparently send a ship, but it's only to observe the destruction after the fact. So China's doing Iran dirty, very dirty, I would say. So I would be curious to know how soon this thing got there. Oh, do we know when it got here? Like I just noticed the thing now after one of the other Twitter randos pointed it out.
No, we actually don't know. Wait a minute. Oh, I was about to say, is that the Stella Imperative? The one that was almost boarded by the Iranians? It's not. Trying to see if I can find the Hai Yangshi. Sadly, I can't find it on Maritime Tracker quickly. Oh, here it is. Wait a minute, there's another one close to it. What's going on here? What's this? Okay, we got the Bourbon Liberty. Oh, that's got to be American.
Bourbon
no,
Liberty.
It's not.
Give me liberty or give me bourbon.
Apparently it's here with a couple of other ships. There's a cable layer. There's an accommodation. Okay, so this is nothing like the Chinese are like watching. This is a part of some sort of a economic venture because there's an accommodation vessel here. There's this research and survey vessel. They then also have a cable layer, and they also have an offshore supply ship as well. So this is some sort of a commercial operation that the Chinese just happen to be a part of, but it's nothing, where it's like the Chinese are literally just camping out, looking like this, waiting for the Iranians to get bombed. I mean, that's not happening, so it looks more like a commercial venture than anything.
I wonder. It's possible maybe it's commercial, but I find it sort of strange considering that a war is about to pop off that they would decide, to keep a commercial venture going in the midst of something this dangerous. So I don't know. Like we don't have any proof that this is necessarily some type of, operation or intelligence gathering initiative, but it seems a little strange. You got to admit. It seems like they could be fishing, but I'm not sure if they're fishing for cod.
Man, next thing you know, the Qataris are going to go, oh, it's another beautiful day, inshallah. Time to send out the fishing boats to go and find the snow crab. Hey, wait, hey! Like the Chinese ship has just got a giant bag on it filled with snow crabs. It's running off as quickly as it can. Man, y'all remember that? The great snow crab apocalypse of a couple of years back when the Chinese literally just showed up in the northern area near the Bering Sea and literally just basically wiped out the snow crabs. Do y'all remember that? Because I remember that. I don't forget crap like that. That was absolutely unreal. They sent their little shitter fleet out to the Bering Sea, literally wiped the place clean and then left. But this appears to be a part of a larger commercial venture because the fact that we're seeing that around it right now. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. We actually have a couple of others up here as well. Let's take a look at these. This is a work vessel. This is another offshore supply ship. And this is also another offshore supply ship. And there's also these little buoys that have been laid out that are also marked as well. Let's see here. I sadly don't know what these are. It's called a spare, but I do not know what in maritime terms is a spare as far as the markers are concerned. And let's see what the ships are that are wandering around in between. So another offshore vessel, and a pollution control vessel. I think this might be some sort of an oil rig operation, like where they're trying to set up new rigs.
Possibly, you never can tell. It's certainly possible, but it is a Chinese flagged research vessel. So, I mean, you always got to be a little skeptical about these vessels like that, especially out of China when pretty much everything has something to do with the state. You have to sort of be a little skeptical, but we can't say it for a fact. But certainly, it seems a little bit fishy.
It does seem fishy. But there are a lot of little support ships, a lot like that one, that are in the area. Like, what are these up here? Floating storage and production. What type of a ship is that even? And
Who
what is
knows? Who knows?
this? Is a crude oil tanker, and then right here is a firefighting vessel. What about this one? A tug. Okay, so I don't know. I think that might just be some normal stuff down there, at least to me. But then again, it is the Chinese, so you always have to kind of take a little bit of a wide berth with that and really pay attention to what they're doing. But outside of that, we are going to be getting back to that little bit of a development that happened in Afghanistan and Pakistan today. Matthew, what are people thinking about that whole thing, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so why did Pakistan really put the hurt on Afghanistan today? The Taliban got a smacking, and Pakistan was the ones to pull it off. So, is this likely to stop the Taliban from retaliating once the U.S. starts striking Iran, or is it not connected whatsoever? 55% said it's simply because Pakistan has beef with the Afghans, and that's simply it. They're out here solving a beef, and they're spinning the block with their airstrikes. 22% said yes, Pakistan did it for U.S. strikes to go ahead and deal with the Taliban. Because recall, the Taliban did offer to defend Iran against the United States, and Pakistan does have a bit of a partnership with the U.S., so it's plausible. And 11% said it's a 50-50 chance of that being the case. And I would personally say in this instance, we had heard before, and once again, it's an ongoing situation. Like there's always border skirmishes happening between Afghanistan and Pakistan. There's some very high tensions there. Pakistan pretty much fights with everybody they're near. That's pretty much the way it works. And the Taliban are no different. So there's certainly beef, but the timing is the only thing that makes people suspicious. But I would generally say it's a 50-50 chance. We really can't say either way of why they did this. It's probably more than likely because of the beef with the Afghanis. That's probably it. So I'm kind of 50-50. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I think it's just because they're beefing as usual. They hate each other. So, honestly, I mean, when you think about it, Pakistan kind of hates everyone around them. They've gotten in border skirmishes with Iran in the past. They've gotten in full-out border wars. This is now the second one with Afghanistan. And they've also gotten in a full-on border war with India as well that was even larger than the one that's been going on with the Taliban. So really everybody, actually literally everybody that Pakistan shares a border with, they are throwing hands. So I'd say it's just because, they hate all of their neighbors, and generally all of their neighbors hate them, and then all of their neighbors hate basically everyone else around them as well. So I think it's just the tensions that exist within the region that's created this interesting moment where another border war has occurred. But moving us on out of the region, it is time for us to move on into the East Asian region and into the People's Republic of China, as we were able to hear that the Chinese have invented the Frisbee. This thing right here. It's called the Olive Bee. The olive bee doesn't stand for anything. It's just an olive bee. But beyond that, the objective of this device is to provide orbital satellite intelligence while being completely undetectable by Western systems.
Yeah, this is actually very fascinating. I did some research on this today. This is actually not new, by the way. The Chinese have been researching this at least since 2022. This is a new variant of what's called a microsatellite, which is supposed to be intended to be a completely invisible, low observable satellite, which is undetectable by Western systems. That's what this is supposed to be. And apparently this version of it that you're looking at right here has such a small cross-section on it that it cannot be picked up. So if you believe the claims, that's pretty dangerous actually, because who knows what this thing could actually be capable of. And if the U.S. can't detect it, and this thing has offensive capabilities or satellite imaging capabilities or something of that nature, this is actually a major national security risk. So they've been researching this for a while. Who knows what they have right now? Of course, China, just like every other country, makes constant deployments with rockets into orbit, and we simply don't know what they're putting into orbit. So very concerning to say the least. It really does look like those magnet shaker things you're talking about right there. It looks just like it.
Man, I was sitting there looking at that while you're talking. I was like, dude, this thing looks like those magnets that you get as a kid, the rattlesnake egg magnets. They literally look just like them. But it does seem as though this might be a bit of an issue for the United States in the future. But I'm sure we would also have some sort of a system comparable to this.
You know what this looks like? Those on-camera sightings that keep happening over the Middle East. We keep seeing these objects that are metallic and shaped very similar to this right here. They're not in orbit. They're actually flying through airspace, like within less than 10,000 feet over the Middle Eastern airspace. We'll see things that look very similar to that. There's no correlation necessarily, but I find the resemblance kind of striking. That is a little bit interesting. But I will say this. this is not getting much media attention, but there's basically a new Cold War between China and the United States with these satellite technologies. And also, not only this type of satellite right here, which is generally stealth, the Chinese now have a LiDAR satellite which can detect our submarines under the water. They have LiDAR that can actually see under the water, which we've seen that technology before, but apparently the Chinese have gotten so good with their LiDAR that they can go so deep as to spot submarines at pretty much any depth within reason. So that's also a huge national security threat as well. It sounds like China is really starting to get advanced with their satellite tech.
I don't know about that one, because if they had that kind of technology, wouldn't they clearly show that they can detect U.S. submarines anywhere within the near coastal regions of China? They've never done that.
Well, why would they announce it?
Well, I mean, it's not like you can defend against it. I mean, at that point, it's not like you make a submarine that doesn't bounce back something to a LiDAR. So, I mean, there would be no harm in saying, but it's not like the United States go, aha, we made the opaque submarine where the LiDAR beam goes right through it, because there's no way to do that.
Yeah, but they do have it though, because I've done research into it. In fact, some military briefers were giving a conference or a speech about this whole situation, and they were mentioning that this was a threat. So this was one of them, by the way. The Olive B was one thing they mentioned. The LiDAR was also another thing they mentioned. So the military is confirming that this is an active threat. We don't know the full capabilities of it, but they're saying it's something they're working to counteract.
You know what else this looks like, Matthew? This looks like the let me see if I'm getting this right. I want to make sure here. Oh yeah, it does. It does look like that. It kind of looks like the NFL Super Bowl trophy, but without the pedestal.
Yeah, it kind of does actually. I'll admit.
Dude, they said, we have the most advanced satellite we've ever had. They just took the NFL trophy, ripped the silver football off the top, and went, behold, the olive bee. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on from that little bit of satellite news out of China and on into our next bit of news, as we were able to hear that China is still working to develop new generations of nuclear weapons, conducting apparently a top secret test sometime this month, according to the New York Post. You can actually see some of the transporter rector launchers of China's strategic rocket forces right here. And I've got to say that somehow, some way, every time China builds anything, it always looks like a ripoff of something else. I mean, this looks like the ripoff of the T'Pol M, but done a lot worse. And the camo is terrible. It looks like someone vomited all over this thing, and that's what the camo job is. That's rough. But beyond that, it does appear that, at least according to the New York Post, they may be preparing to conduct new nuclear tests and also further develop more modern and advanced nuclear weaponry. Moving us on out of the People's Republic of China, it's finally time for us, folks, to move on to the rest of our news that we've gotten, which is out of the Americas and out of Europa. And it's going to be good news, great news, it's long-lasting news. But before we move on into that, I do have to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all being here with us tonight and enjoying the show. At the peak tonight, we have had a whopping 25,000 people here, just about, which is a really crazy amount of people. And we've also had 142,000 people here over the course of the show's 1 hour and 10 minutes of running. And I got to thank you all so much for enjoying this channel so far. We're always honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all truly enjoy this channel and find it to be a great source of news. And I hope that y'all do subscribe if you're new to the channel, because we cover this news 6 days a week, every single night, in the very same format that we are right now, every day but Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, meaning that the kind of news that you're getting right now, you can get every single night if you subscribe and hit the bell button. And also, whenever we start to bomb Iran, which could be whenever now, we will be going live immediately as soon as that happens, meaning that you'll be getting up-to-date, real-time news at the very moment that it's happening when military operations begin against Iran. But before we move on into the rest of our news that we have here on the channel, which is from the Americas and mostly Europe, I do want to make sure that we take a little bit of a moment, or in uno momento, to be able to answer a couple of questions from the chat. We're going to be getting 3 of them, and then we're going to be moving into the major news that we've gotten out of Europe over the course of the day, and also America. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And also, by the way, during our question segment at the very end, we'll explore the whole China LiDAR satellite thing a little bit more, because I have sources to back that stuff up. So we can look at that a little later. I don't want to rabbit hole on it right now, though, because we're still in the middle of our news, but we have the articles. Also, I have the article about that Olive B stealth satellite as well that we can take a look at. But jumping into our first super chat here to thank our channel donors of the night, we have a $100 support from none other than Chris Feilbach. And thank you very much, Chris, for that very generous $100 support, and we appreciate that very, very much as always. He said, whoever eats the melon has to sit there with trembling legs too. expression for FAFO, but in Farsi, according to my Iranian friend, LSA.
I thank you for the incredible support. I do have to ask this though, Chris. Who in the world's legs start trembling when they eat a melon? Like when I eat a cantaloupe or a watermelon or any or normal kind of a melon, my knees never get shaky, palm sweaty, open up the door of mom's spaghetti. It never happens to me. Like Nancy, what type of melons do they have in Iran? Do they have poison melons?
So is that what the Iranians are saying when they put out their propaganda? They're saying whoever eats the melon has to sit there trembling. So yeah, that's they need to come up with a new phrase, I think.
Dude, they got melon phobia in Iran. They're like, oh, not a watermelon. No, please. It's like, what the hell's wrong with it? It's like, it's just a melon. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Chris. A very interesting sort of a figure of speech in Iran. But that is, I don't understand it because I personally find melons quite delightful. I like my cantaloupes, my normal, like honeydew melons, the watermelons. Like I've generally never found a melon that I'm generally adverse to. I think they're all pretty good. But I do thank you incredibly for the support nonetheless and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you so much for sharing that with us. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And a humongous and tremendous thanks to you so much once again for throwing in that unbelievably massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, Chris, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible every day. We wouldn't have been able to make this channel possible for 150,000 people at this moment right now. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and extremely appreciative of folks like you and your incredible support, because this channel doesn't run on our live streams, ads, or have any sponsors, and it's the viewers themselves that fund these streams and help us to be able to do this as our full-time job and keep covering the news every single day of the week. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $100 support from Nick Hines as well. And thank you very much, Nick, for that very generous support. Just like Chris Duran at 100. We appreciate that. He said, hello, LSA Rockstars. He said, in a concert. However, I am with you guys in spirit. And could you pass my question to one of the LSA brothers and sisters in the chat? And thanks, Enforcers.
And I thank you so much for the unbelievably incredible support, Nick. And I gotta say, I hope you're having fun at that concert. And I gotta say, that is a real commitment of you in the middle of a concert to come here to the stream and support it. I gotta thank you massively for that. And I hope that when you're watching this tomorrow, if you're not watching it right now, that the concert was a blast and that hopefully you had a lot of fun with some good friends. And we will make sure to pass the question to some of your brothers and sisters here in the amazing Lee Spring Army in the live chat. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again for having incredibly kind words to say about the LSA and us as well, and also supporting the channel massively so we can keep this thing running every day. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got from the live chat in honor of Nick Hines?
And we have a live chat question from Pirate, who said, so how far is it for the protesters to get a hold of some weapons to fight against the Iranian government?
It's not that far. We actually saw the last time around that some of them did get a hold of some weapons. They generally just need to break into a police headquarters, an IRGC, or a besieged facility and overrun it before it can be evacuated, including the weaponry, and they can generally get their hands on some weapons pretty easy that way. Another way to do that is for the CIA or the Mossad to just give them weapons, which if this continues on the way it's going right now, that's a fairly high likelihood that they might get some weapons. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a humongous thanks to you once again, Nick Hines, for sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we were able to address it pretty well. And with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of our news from around the world.
All right. And also, by the way, I want to address something real quick. I've seen several people say tonight that they have gotten word or they've heard chatter that apparently the U.S. is going to strike Iran either on Monday or Tuesday. I am familiar with the source that came from. We won't name them here just out of just not naming people. We don't want to start beef. We don't want to, get into that whole situation. But we do not know if that is credible or not. The person that says they heard that information claims they heard it from a White House source, but we cannot independently verify that. And also, even if we did hear it from a source like that, we would not probably repeat it on the air because that might violate operational security because we don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the operation in any real way whatsoever. So we'll have to see if that turns out to be the case. That would be unusual for them to attack during a weekday like that. That would be out of the norm, at least for recent operations. But moving into our last super chat here, this one's going to go to B. Justin, who puts in a $50 support support. And thank you very much, B. Justin, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. He said, I'm overdue to donate, and here's to the Enforcer Caffeine and Food Fund, and long live the LSA.
And a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you so much for the caffeine and food fund. I personally have to say that tonight I've eaten an amazing cheese ravioli with beef sauce. It was an unbelievably delicious ravioli, one that was incredible. And I also had a delicious cup of black coffee, pike roast, that is. I believe it's like 8 to 10 fluid ounces of the stuff in my LSA mug. It actually has the LSA Eagle on it. We'll have to try and get that back out in the merch sometime eventually, because I know a lot of people are like, I want that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like, we don't have that out for sale at the moment yet. We did a plug merch. We don't even have any like any merch to plug. But beyond that, though, I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. The food and coffee fund is a very important one. It helps us be able to keep our stomachs full and our brains going at 1,000,000 miles an hour in the late hours of the night to be able to run this show. And of course, B. Justin, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And thank you for being a big part of it and supporting the channel so that way we can keep the Lee Spring Army rolling, and also the Enforcer channel as well. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to move on. And also, some people said, DoorDash? No. It's your amazing friends from Costco that have provided me with this delicious ravioli meal. It's one of the pre-prep things, you know, the things that come in like the tray, you just throw it in the oven. Cooking is a little bit hard for Matthew and me to do, and I know that, well, Matthew cooks a lot more than me, but I don't even think he cooks that much anymore from what I know, because we just have very little time to be able to throw over into cooking. So usually we have to try and find some way to make it quick, and the pre-made meals from Costco are really quick, because literally all you do is cover it in tin foil, get the oven to the right temperature, pop it in for a set period of time, and then pull it right back out, and it's ready to go. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and it's time for us to move on into the rest of our news from around the world. Moving us on over and into Florida, we do have to cover a little bit of news that is quite interesting, and I do have to say is a point of national pride and prestige for the United States of America. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also called NASA, is going to be launching the next operation or next mission to be able to return to the moon, which will be under the Artemis project, or the Artemis program, is I believe what NASA calls it specifically. Unfortunately, a launch was supposed to be happening sometime around right now. A couple of months ago, that was the general plan, was to have the launch conducted now. We then heard that it was actually pushed back to March due to poor weather around the area of Cape Canaveral, and now we're hearing that it's going to be pushed back, sadly, into April, once again due to technical difficulties on board the Artemis rocket. That is the Artemis right there. Really cool sort of a program, and I gotta say that I'm absolutely enthralled to see that the U.S. is going to be returning back to launching missions to the moon. I think it's a huge point of national pride and prestige for the United States of America that we are the only country so far to be able to boast the claim that we have landed human beings on the surface of another object in space, and that we're going to be doing that here again. But sadly, we're going to have to wait until April to see this conducted. Over the course of the entirety of the program's existence since 2019, the Artemis is costed about $50 billion as far as the entire program is concerned, which I'd have to say over the course of about, what is that, like 7 years, that's actually not that bad, really. I mean, you know, there's a lot of ways that money could be wasted that would be worse than this. I think that this is a huge leap forward for science and progress, especially in our modern age, and once again showing that the United States is on up there, at least in terms of technological and scientific prowess. But with that, it is time for us to move on out of that little bit of news inside of Cape Canaveral. And you know, folks, we might actually go out of our way. I don't know if a lot of you all will be excited to see this, but if we can find a way to do it, I would love to see that we were able to cover the launch of the Artemis live on air, and possibly the landing of the astronauts on the moon when that actually happens in April, because that would be incredibly cool to see basically the Apollo program recreated in the modern day and age, and hopefully be able to get to cover that live here if we somehow can get around the copyright issues with the footage. So, well, let us know what y'all would think about that. I think that would be really cool. What do you think, Matthew? Do you think that would be cool to do?
I think it would be pretty cool, honestly. I'm just trying to figure out why they're having such a hard time going back to the moon when we apparently, or at least they sort of gave the impression that it was a lot more seamless way back in the day when we first went to the moon. Now all of a sudden we're like, what is it? How many years later is it? 50, 60 something years later? Is it true?
Yeah, something like that. Well, I mean, the Apollo...
Yeah, we're way ahead now. We're way ahead now, and we're like having a hard time getting anything to the moon, which seems a little strange.
Well, I mean, the Apollo program had a lot of bumps in it that they don't talk about. Like, I believe Apollo 11 was actually postponed several times before the launch was conducted. Apollo 13 suffered a catastrophic failure and didn't even get to land on the moon before they made it to the moon. And then also Apollo 1 cooked all 3 astronauts alive when a fire began inside the capsule on the ground. And due to the way the Apollo capsule was designed at that time, they weren't able to escape from the capsule, and all 3 of the astronauts burned to death. So, I mean, these sorts of things run into issues. And you also don't want to load a whole bunch of guys onto a hydrogen-filled rocket and then have it possibly explode on them, and have another Challenger disaster or something along those lines.
Also, the people are saying it's not landing on the moon; it's simply orbiting the moon. It's going to take a look at it.
Really? Hold up. Let me look this up. The Artemis. Let's see. Let me take a look at this real quick. I need to find this out because I had been under the concept that this was actually going to be landing on the moon. Let's see here. First crewed around the moon. Oh, yeah. So this is basically like Apollo. I believe it would be Apollo 9 and 10, where they're just going to do a lap or two around the moon and then come back. So they're not going to be landing this time around. They're basically going back and kind of recreating the whole will with the Apollo program at this point.
Yeah, so that's really weird that we went to the moon such a long time ago, actually got people to walk it, and now we're barely having a hard time like getting people to even orbit the moon. Seems kind of a little weird.
Well, NASA is dealing with a very small budget compared to what they had back in the day when that was going on. And also, a lot of the guys who worked on the Apollo program are dead, and a lot of the knowledge and expertise that they learned over that time basically became extinct at this point, because when they died, nobody really meant to carry on the entirety of it all. So they're basically having to go back and recreate the whole thing step by step.
Well, that is hire the Germans again.
Man, man, you're gonna have some.
Well, the Germans, the good Germans.
I just remember the good old days. What? I mean, we need to work on this rocket. It's like I don't know about that. But anyways, moving on from that. Oh man, those Project Paperclip scientists. If y'all actually know about them, I mean that whole thing from Dr. Strangelove about the German advisor to the president. It wasn't that far off. But moving on from that, we have also been able to hear within the United States today that apparently there's been some sort of an interesting development with the armed forces. I have to tell you this one because we gotta grill this one on air because this is absolutely ridiculous. I've never heard of anything like this before, and I'd have to agree with Aaron here. The country is cooked if this is what's going to be rolling out here in the future. This is what is now going to be happening for warrant officers within the near future. Dubbed the Warrant Officer Retention Bonus action, the system will debut in March, an Army official said Friday. In the news release, Army officials said the new system represents a shift from traditional fixed-rate bonuses to a more flexible, market-driven system, and that the auction encourages warrant officers to bid their true value. Here's how the Army says this is going to work. Senior warrant officers hoping to receive a bonus for extending their active duty service commitment will submit confidential bids, which represent the minimum monthly paycheck bump each soldier would be satisfied receiving to sign a new 6-year contract. Once all eligible warrant officers submit their bids, Army officials will determine both the amount of the bonus payment and who will receive it by calculating the auction's market clearing rate, a concept used widely in economics and finance. In that process, the winning bid is the bonus amount that would spread all of the program's funding for the year amongst the most soldiers who agreed to accept a payment that size or smaller with their bids. All soldiers who win in the auction will receive the winning bonus, even if their bid was lower. Those who bid too high get nothing.
What the hell? What kind of bullshit is that? That's crazy right there. What a way to reward the soldiers for serving than to start, trying to basically shortchange people. That's kind of lame.
Wow, everyone, we're going to have warrant officers in the Army now at the lowest bidder. That it doesn't really say, like when you say we're going to have the finest personnel at the lowest bidding, that doesn't really get off the concept of the finest personnel. You know what I mean? I feel like the fixed rate payment system that we've had so far has worked pretty damn well. I think this is just going to end up pissing off a whole bunch of warrant officers, and we're going to see them not coming back around to the service when their contracts are up. That's what I'm thinking. This sounds, folks, I'm not going to lie, this sounds like a straight up kind of scam to me. Like, this sounds ridiculous. The Army needs to back off of this immediately. We're probably going to see that warrant officers in the ranks get decimated from this because this is ridiculous. So if you bid too high and you have no clue how high is, meaning that you're going to bid as low as you possibly can, basically getting no bonus anyways, they're not going to give you anything, That is an absolute scam. They're literally just basically trying to go out of their way at this point to not pay warrant officers any bonuses to stay around. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea. It seems like they should probably just give people bonuses based on if they're actually doing a good job or not, and probably leave it at that instead of having them bid against each other like it's some type of money-saving operation. It's like they don't get paid much anyway. Let's be honest. The military pay is not great, to be perfectly honest. It hasn't changed in a while, and it's like, should they really try to shortchange people with their salaries already being pretty low? I mean, probably not.
No, this is this is absolutely stupid. This is the dumbest thing I have ever seen. Like, and also some people are like, well, this is what the corporate world's been doing for years. The military is not the corporate world. I don't know if you know this, but office workers don't get shot at for a living. Like that's the army. And and whenever it comes to people in the military going, oh, I get shot at, it's like, well, you signed the contract, you know what you were getting into. But they're also not trying to get into corporatocracy at the same time as getting shot at. I mean, in the middle of a war, let's say World War III breaks out, we're going to have all the warrant officers get together and throw out re-enlistment bids to see what kind of bonus they're going to get. That's stupid. I mean, think about how dumb that really is. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. So they gave out the Patriot bonus or whatever it was, and now they're going to just screw over all the warrant officers now by basically having them bid at the lowest possible bid possible to screw them over and pay them less. I mean, this is absolutely stupid. This is how we see that the U.S. military's competency gets greatly reduced, because the people who actually have any sorts of skills or any sort of competency, a lot of these warrant officers, most of them are helicopter pilots and whatnot in the Army. They're going to go, this is stupid. I'm packing my shit and I'm going elsewhere. I'm going civilian so I can go fly helicopters there and get paid even more than I do in this crummy Army. I mean, this is not going to turn out well. I'm having a feeling that if I knew any warrant officers, sadly I don't, I bet they would be bucking this as well, because this sounds just insane. I've never heard of something this dumb in my life. But I do have to say that on a bright note, though, speaking of something locally here, we did actually hear that apparently there's going to be some sort of federal assistance and intervention in the ongoing situation with the Great Salt Lake, which has been drying up over the years. And apparently they're going to be trying to refill the lake. They're doing it for a couple of reasons. One, it's the ecological and economic reasons. If the Salt Lake dries up, Salt Lake City basically becomes uninhabitable, just to kind of like be honest about that. And then secondly, it's also for the Olympics as a prestige thing, because usually these sorts of projects come around when the Olympics are coming. And in a couple of years, the Olympics are going to be coming back to Salt Lake, I believe, for the Winter Olympics, if I'm not mistaken, because we here in Salt Lake have the finest snow in the world. It's just straight powder. But beyond that, the Great Salt Lake will be refilled, which I have to say, folks, I've been talking about ever since we got here, and everyone in Salt Lake apparently talks about that as well. So I got to say that that's a great thing to hear, that we're going to be getting some federal assistance with refilling the Salt Lake, and now the state of Salt Lake is also going to be working on that as well. So moving on out of the Salt Lake news, which is kind of a smaller thing in its own self, we are going to be moving on out of that absolutely insane deal that's going on with the warrant officers and their pays and pay rates and bonuses. And we're now going to be moving on over and into Europe, as we do have a lot of news coming out of Europe. Inside of RAF Lakenheath, we were able to see that some people were able to take some pictures today, and ooh-wee, beautiful.
Oh, look at those gold canopies right there. You got to admit that looks pretty damn nice right there. I like the way that gold shimmers in the sun right there. That's nice.
Man, I be glazing the F-22s just like those technicians be glazing those canopies. Oh, man, they look clean.
Also, by the way, a big shout out to Havoc Aviation, by the way. This guy takes some pretty good photos. I saw a lot of folks today on Twitter. They were taking the guy's image. They were cropping his name, his little watermark there out of the bottom of it, and they were sharing it around and trying to steal his credit from him. So a big shout out to him, by the way. There's some fantastic photos right here. He's got some crazy photos, like of other stuff, like actually in flight too. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, Havoc Aviation does a great job with photography of aircraft. I mean, these pictures look like they would be in like a video game cutscene, like for like Call of Duty or Battlefield. I mean, these are A+ rate. I got to say, a huge shout out to Havoc Aviation. If y'all do have Twitter accounts, make sure to go give this guy a follow. He does really good work going out there and taking photos like this and posting them out there for everyone to see. And also, that's why we don't go out of the way to do something as crummy as, say, cropping out his watermark, because he definitely deserves all the credit for these sorts of images here. They are sublime pieces of work of photography. But moving on from that, we've also been able to see that the Department of the Army did some sublime photography today that then got taken down within 3 minutes. They actually published some footage, or more so pictures today, of the long-range hypersonic weapon system.
Oh, You mean hypersonic missiles, the ones that weren't supposed to work very well? We made them anyway?
Yeah, because it's like, oh my god, the Chinese, we have nothing to counter it, and then we had to go make them. But yeah, we do have long-range hypersonic weapons, and funnily enough, folks, these have actually been in the service of the Army. I believe ever since early 2025 or late 2024. It's just that nobody knows about them or has heard about them because they don't really talk about them a whole lot.
Yeah. Also, there's one major flaw to this system, and do you happen to know what that flaw is?
What is the flaw?
The flaw is that even though this is a very potent system, these missiles fly at Mach 5 plus, which is pretty damn fast, and it can overwhelm an enemy. The problem is it costs too damn much. We've heard that apparently it cost about $41 million a missile in 2023 dollars, not adjusting for inflation. So if that number is indeed accurate, this system is insanely expensive. That is insanely, wildly expensive. So I'm not so sure. And also, by the way, BC guy just pointed out, well, there's only 2 missiles in the launcher. And that is true. There's only 2 in the launcher. So I hope they pick their targets well because they only have 2 shots out of this one launcher.
Also, by the way, to clarify here, this one vehicle doesn't cost 2.7 billion. It's actually the entire battery, and the battery actually includes 4 of these transport erector launchers, meaning that each battery is able to fire off 8 of these, and it also has a battery operations center and also a command vehicle that accompany them as well whenever they travel around. So it's actually 6 vehicles with 4 launchers and basically 2 command and operations vehicles. Then that's what costs about 2.7 billion. But I'll kind of be a little bit straight up with y'all. Hypersonics are more so just the rage, but they don't really live up to the hype recently because we've seen endlessly that Russian Zircons, which are actual hypersonics, mind you all, I have to make that clear. The Kinzels are not really hypersonics, but Zircons meet every definition of being a hypersonic missile. And the Ukrainians have been swatting those out of the sky with Patriot missiles quite commonly these days. So, I mean, the whole concept of these things doesn't make sense. The reason why they've made these is because when the Chinese made them, the media got a hold of it. And then the Russians started making them, and then the Iranians started to say they were making them. And then the media got a hold of it and went, oh my God, China, Russia, and Iran is running circles around us because, all the military analysts don't know a damn thing. What are we going to do? We're so far behind. So then it became a huge prerogative of the civil administrations under Trump and Biden to go and throw money at this thing and have it made. Basically, that's the whole reason this thing exists, was because of public pressure and how people thought our enemies are running circles around us by creating a missile that's 70 years old in concept.
So apparently the idea, the doctrine behind this system is to use it for rapid long-range strikes against high-value targets only. But my question is, though, at $41 million a missile, that's an estimate, by the way. It's not even the real number. Some estimates put it as high as $106 million per missile. So it could be anywhere in that range. We're just not entirely sure. So these missiles are wildly expensive. So the return on investment is probably not going to be very good. Because, what are they aiming the thing at? Like, what are they going to be hitting with it? This is made for long-range strikes. Give me an example. Like, what could they possibly hit to warrant spending that much per missile?
I wouldn't even know. And I see some people in chat, they're like, oh, well, they get air defense with this. Well, we already have something to do that. That's electronic warfare and suppression of enemy air defense missiles, which are the age immediate harms. We already have something that can do that at far cheaper the cost. So it wouldn't be air defense. Maybe a naval target, but even these long-range hypersonic weapons that we made cannot hit a moving target, so they can't be used against naval targets or, say, capital ships. So that's out of the picture. Then we move on to something smaller. I guess like a logistics hub. That might be worth a couple of million, but that's, not a high enough priority target for this. And I also got to put this in mind for y'all. Each one of these missiles costs the same price as an F-16. So it's basically like taking an F-16 and just chucking it at something and just throwing the whole thing down the drain. There's no reusability to it even.
Yeah, and also, by the way, what about the AGM-183? You remember that? It was a hypersonic air-to-ground ballistic missile that was being given to the Air Force. Those, which are apparently more potent, at least from what I've heard, that's only about $15 to $18 million a missile, from what I've heard. So I don't know, like the Army's version of that at such a wildly high cost per missile doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. So I just don't see it.
Yeah, I just don't see it either. I'm not really getting it. I will say though, the pictures go hard as hell. I mean, these are really impressive. They were taken down literally within like 3 minutes. But whoever there was, the Army photographer that went out and took these, I mean, they put some work into. I mean, like the fogginess, the trees surrounding it, the nice little vista that it's in. I mean, this almost looks like it was a perfect made picture just to publish. And then they took it down within like 2 to 3 minutes, so no one even really got to see it. And some people saved it and then started to republish it around, and that's how we got the picture.
Yeah, it seems like this is a very expensive photo because that's pretty much all it's going to be is a photo at this point.
Yeah, so moving on out of the long-range hypersonic weapons, which sadly really don't live up to the hype that much, we are going to be moving on and into Russia. As we were able to see, the Ukrainian drone attacks last night were able to cause another large amount of damage to the Russian Federation and critical industries and infrastructure over the course of the night. Within the area of the city of Saransk, we were able to see that there was a large fire that broke out here from a Ukrainian attack. From what we understand...
Also, did you forget China, by the way?
No, we already covered China. Remember, we were covering China a hot minute ago. Like, we were talking about, the snake egg magnet, and then we also talked about the nuclear weapons testing and the new nuclear weapons. I think you might have been busy during that time, but I mean, the markers...
We have a poll.
Oh, we have a bowl? We have a bowl? Oh, well, we have a
Yes.
bowl. Well, we're going to have to go back to that then. We'll have to go back to that. I didn't know that we had a bowl. I was bebopping along. But beyond that, a lot of people are talking about the whole Chinese thing with the nuclear testing and the weaponry and all that stuff. And a lot of people are wondering, why was the info leaked on all this stuff? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we are hearing, at least today, that China reportedly conducted another top secret nuclear test just weeks ago, in addition to the other ones that had been previously announced, where they were using a special technique to pretty much conceal it from the seismographic sensors in the area. So why is this info suddenly leaking at such a very high frequency? Because typically this information is usually classified by the United States intelligence, but it seems to be that we're hearing about it very, very frequently, which is very odd. 38% said the U.S. wants to justify nuclear tests of our own here in the United States, while 32% said someone's simply running a big mouth, and 18% said the U.S. simply can't hide it anymore, and it's leaking on its own. And I am very, very, very confident that the U.S. is doing this to justify their own nuclear tests. This information has been known for years that China's been conducting these tests, and they intentionally released it in very high frequency in the last couple of months because the U.S. wants to get back to testing our own nuclear weapons, and you have to have a justification for it. That's that way the public doesn't have a whole bunch of backlash when the U.S. announced tests like that. So it's purely because of that reason. So that way when the public says, hey, wait a minute, we don't want nuclear tests, the government can say, shut up, China's going to take us down, shut up. And everybody will be like, oh, well, fair enough. At least I think. But Enforcer, what say you?
We're refilling the Great Salt Lake, so that way when we start conducting nuclear tests, the radiation can fall on the lake and make it glow green. It's going to be the greatest glowing lake ever in the world. It's going to be really crazy. But beyond that, it is to justify our own nuclear tests, because if we can say that the Chinese are doing it, then we can justify ourselves doing it, because at that point we're saying, well, the Chinese have already broken the treaty that bans nuclear testing, so there's no point in following it. We're going to do our own. That's basically the whole point of it. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we're going to be moving back into Russia, specifically within the area of Saransk, as we were able to see that a factory today which produces and manufactures power electronics, rectifiers, inverters, power supplies, converters, and also the flux capacitors was also hit today and did burn. Bliet.
Man, I guess they rectified that situation.
Man, I guess, they put a rectifier in that thing.
They went in here and rectified the situation. They said, sir, do something to this building, sir.
Look at it just burning out here. Huh. Somebody's having a doo-doo in the background. What the hell is that?
Man, someone's just brabbing. My parents like, ooh, it's like, but anyways, here's the next clip of the fire. Cooking up, Gary's way. And someone said, there isn't really a place that we can conduct nuclear tests without pissing someone off. And I agree. That's why we should generally see that we don't do them. I mean, we already know that our nuclear weapons work, and we're not really developing new ones. So why would we need to conduct nuclear tests? That's my question. The only thing that it is basically just chest beating, going, oh, look, I'm big and strong, and nuclear weapons work. Everyone knows our nuclear weapons work. If the Russians tested a nuclear weapon, I mean, they're really going out of their way to show that they work because nobody believes that they do. But we don't have to. I mean, we all know that our nuclear weapons work, and there's no point in having to publicly show that again. But we can see the fire right there. And we can also see the smoke rising over there as well. But moving on from that and on into the area of Kazan in the Tatarstan region, we also saw footage of the drones over this region flying deeper into Russia. There's one of them. And moving on from that, we also saw the drone right there and right there. And there it was right there in Kazan.
Oh my God. 2,000 plus kilometer strike or something like that. That's crazy work right there. How did it just fly in like that?
It just flew in like that, man. And we even got that footage of the Watkins plant. Or the damage, at least. Let's take a look. This is the before. This is the after. Notice the hole. Let's look at that again. No hole. Hole.
Damn.
Red squared. I thought you clearly show the hole. It appears that it was a 23 by 19 meter hole in the roof of production shop number 36 that was caused. And we were able to confirm today, folks, that it was caused by a flamingo. So the Ukrainians did use a flamingo on the Watkins plant. The Ukrainians used their own cruise missile to strike at and destroy the Russian factory that produces their cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. And according to what we've been able to hear today from the Russians, they're bitching and moaning about the lack of air defense inside their country. Let's read exactly what they had to say. Strike by the AFU with whatever it was on Udmurtia raises some questions about the organization of air defense work. Damn, they're asking this question 4 years in. I mean, haven't they watched everything else get blown up at this point? How did this, whatever it was, fly more than 1,400 kilometers over our country, bypassing all positional air defense districts? The how here is not a rhetorical question for hand-wringing, defeatist phrases muttered from the couch, or punishing the innocent. It is necessary for an adequate analysis of the situation so that this does not happen again. What in the air defense system failed? Where to strengthen? What new assets to deploy or develop? Man, this guy acts like Russia's actually got a budget to develop or deploy anything. He's like, they don't even have any money. Because this raid on Udmurtia, where defense factories are located, is far from the first. In July 2025, there was already a high-intensity attack, during which most drones were shot down. It's clear that even without us armchair experts, there are plenty of smart people there. The overwhelming majority of drones were intercepted, as seen in the Russian Ministry of Defense summaries. Oh, really? Oh, really? Get this.
Liars.
Right, get this. This guy's like, clearly, according to Russian propaganda, all the drones are shot down, so clearly everything's fine, although everywhere's blowing up all the time. The only thing is that the department publicly reports only successes, while missed ones are announced by governors from the regions. That's how they decided to build the information policy here. Of course, given the enormous size of our country, dreaming of a single continuous air defense field is unrealistic. America has one. Why don't they? We're about the same size as them. Anyways, let's see here. Here we are. But the regions where military production is concentrated would like to be covered even more effectively. And the last question asked to us today from the front regarding the enemy strike on Udmurtia: what if the payload of that thing had been nuclear? The same British are ready to do a great deal to prolong the conflict. I don't know what the last sentence means. That was poorly written.
Man, I don't think launching a nuke at Russia would prolong the conflict. I think that would pretty much accelerate the thing to a crisis. I don't think that's going to prolong it. What do the Russians think? If their country gets nuked, it's going to drag the war out for 10 years. It'll probably bring it to a quick end.
You know, Matthew, but I've never thought of that, though. Like, this Russian kind of does have a point. We could just nuke Russia, and if their air defense detection systems are that bad off that they can't even see a Ukrainian drone fly that deep in, I don't even think they could detect a nuclear-armed cruise missile flying that far into their country. I think they would be shocked and just be like, what the hell happened? And they wouldn't even know why that happened until it blew up.
Well, the missiles will be different, though, wouldn't it? Because they can detect with their satellites. They don't have quite our satellite network when it comes to detecting missile launches, but they do have a light version of what we have. So they can detect missile launches like that, but they can't detect the drones with those satellites.
But this was a Flamingo missile.
Are you sure? I thought these were drones.
No.
Because I thought. Are you sure?
Yeah, the Ukrainians did confirm that this was a Flamingo that hit the Vakinsk plant.
Interesting. So let's
And they
see
didn't
here.
pick
I
it
was
up.
trying to read. Trying to skim through here for a second. Maybe, possibly so. Possibly. I don't know. It's kind of curious.
Well, let me see. Vakinsk plant hit. Let me see here. So, according to United 24, and I mean, you know, that's basically the Ukrainian state's media agency, they stated Ukrainian-made Flamingo missiles reportedly struck the Votkinsk plant in Russia's Imert region on February 21st, targeting a facility known for missile production and so on. So, and also it appears that was restated by DW, the Kyiv Independent. The Kyiv Independent ran the headline, Ukraine confirms Flamingo strike on key Russian ballistic missile factory, and the Ukrainian Pravda stated that Ukraine-made FP-5 Flamingo hits Russian manufacturing plant in Votkinsk. So everyone's confirming that it was a Flamingo. So the Russians didn't pick this thing up along this whole flight path and didn't even pick it up when it was getting over Votkinsk and impacting the target.
Well, in that case, then that is interesting. That means they don't really have the ability to detect it. Or if they did detect it, they didn't have any way to shoot it down, even if they saw it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that is a decent point, actually.
Yeah, you know, like, I've never thought of it like that, but this Russian brought up a pretty good point. I mean, you know, it's like, if the United States had a whole bunch of nuclear-armed Tomahawks and we fired those into Russia at, say, their nuclear facilities, like their nuclear silos and such, we could knock out their entire nuclear arsenal on land with a first strike, and the Russians would almost be entirely blind to it at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a fairly wild sort of a thing to think about, but the Russians are woefully underprepared for any sort of a counterstrike, at least in terms of air power in the modern day. Moving us further on down and into the area of Neftogorsk, we were able to see that the firm satellite did confirm that the entire oil facility near Neftogorsk is on fire, so it appears that the hit was catastrophic within that area, and we've also seen a little bit of an additional update around the Saratov area, showing that Saratov has come under an air attack tonight. Up to you, mate. Bleed.
Oh, look, there's a fire.
Look at that. Wow. How cool.
Look at this guy spying on people's apartments over there. He's like, look at him.
Man.
Who's that over there in the window?
Man, he said, oh, look, an explosion. This gives me an excuse to film Mary Sue getting out of the shower. It's like, what the hell, bro? Like, it's like...
Look, it's a smoke show. It turns out he wasn't talking about the explosion.
Dude, he was sitting there, man. He was sitting there with his phone, and someone walked in on him. He's sitting there going, ooh la la. And they're like, what? Are you a traitor to the country? No, you don't understand. I was looking at women in the other bed. It's like, man, but anyways. Oh, man. But moving on from that and that weirdo Russian, we also get to see smoke rising in Ingles as well, right there. This guy not looking into apartment windows in the midst of the explosion. He was actually looking at the explosion. So good on this guy. But still, quite interesting to see. And it does show that the Ukrainians were able to land some hits on Saratov and Ingles overnight. Now it's time for us to move on into Ukraine. And sadly, folks, I do have to start off my news with a bit of an unfortunate development that happened in Lviv today, as we did hear that apparently 2 explosions rocked the city of Lviv area, and police forces began to respond immediately. Before I get on further into the story, however, I do want to make sure that we take a moment to address the Russian air defense situation, considering that the Russians have been hammered and slammed basically last night by Russian air defenses. A lot of people are wondering, what's up with the Russian air defense? Is it just that they're incompetent, or that they don't have enough, or what? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so after several 2,000-kilometer breaches have been happening for years at this point, the Russians are finally complaining, like they just learned about it, that they're lacking air defense. So what are your thoughts? 65% said Russia does not have enough air defense, while 18% said they simply can't detect the incoming missiles and drones, and 12% said Russia simply misplaced their air defense. They got it as dusty in the closet. They just need to pull it out there and put it to work. So I would say it's simply a matter of them not having enough. Most of the air defense they're using right now, believe it or not, and this is not just saying it for propaganda, it's around Putin's mansions. You can see that from satellite. He's got air defense galore around all of his houses. He has several mansions, and they all have overwhelming air defense. So that shows you where pretty much the loyalties lie. It's with Putin, it's not with the people. And he leaves everything else wide open. The refineries, all the ammo storage depots, it's all without air defense for the most part. So unless it's serving Putin or some propaganda purpose, then they simply don't have enough. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. They don't have enough air defenses, generally because they are putting them around Putin's mansions, and also due to the fact that they've lost a lot of them in Ukraine. So I would be with 65%. The Russians are woefully underprepared for a modern air war, especially in terms of air defense. You know, something else that's kind of funny, folks, when I think about it, is that Russia can't detect or really figure out where drones or missiles are coming from or going to in Russia when they're under attack. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are like, we have a whole bunch of styrofoam cups, and we put them over cell phones that are permanently charged on these poles in the middle of nowhere. And if a drone flies over them, we have a little algorithm that picks up the noise, and then that relays it to us so that way we know where it's at. Like, and they've been doing, you know what, the Ukrainians have been doing that for 4 straight years. It's actually kind of crazy. I have to explain this really quickly. Ukraine has, from what we've been told, according to the Ukrainian government, a drone detection network that spans the entirety of the country. And how it works is that they have a whole bunch of poles that they stuck into the ground, and they're not that tall. I mean, they're like 6 or 8 feet tall. And they have like a little cover over the top of them, and they put a phone in there, and the phone is constantly on and charged. And it's set up, it's programmed into a little algorithm that they have to where if they ever hear the sound of a propeller or a jet engine overhead of that little object or that little phone, it then relays that back to a central collection point to where it says that this phone picked up this specific noise. So it's a jet-powered missile or a propeller-powered drone or a jet-powered drone. And then it says exactly where it was. It doesn't say the direction that it's heading in, but once enough of these go off, they get a general idea of where these drones are going. But we actually have some breaking news that's coming out at this moment. So, Matthew, what do we got here?
Breaking news! Breaking news! We have news. Go to Flight Radar 24. The Russian emergency services aircraft, the Aleutian, has showed up inside of Iran. We're seeing that right now over the Iranian airspace. There it is, right down there. There's 2 of them. There's one currently over Iran. Look at that. That might be an evacuation right there, is what that could possibly be. That's interesting. Enforcer, what's your take on that?
The Ministry for Emergency Situations. That's a fairly rare group to see. Let me pull them up really quickly. The Ministry of Emergency.
I'm wondering if this could be maybe evacuations. Maybe one of these aircraft is heading to Bushehr to get the scientists out, possibly. Maybe they're heading to like a place where maybe some Russian officials are hanging out inside of Iran to get them out before strikes occur. This is strange, though. We don't see these aircraft going there very often.
So they are charged specifically with the responsibility of the evacuation of Russian civilians from soon-to-be or ongoing war zones. So
That's a big indicator. That's a very big indicator right here.
This is a very big one. I mean, like, this is a pretty large confirmation that the Russians must have been told at some point that U.S. strikes are happening incredibly soon, because it looks as though, from what I'm reading online, because I had to make sure, because the Ministry of Emergency Situations does a lot. Like, they also evacuate civilians from, say, disaster areas, like wherever there's like a blizzard or people got caught in the middle of nowhere in the woods and they're dying. They'll send out an MI8, but they actually do, like, the original foundation of the modern Ministry for Emergency Situations was the Russian Rescue Corps, which was assigned to a mission of rapid response to emergencies and also civil emergencies and evacuations. So this does appear, I think, actually, Matthew, this does appear that both of these IL-76s are probably turning off their actually, they're now squawking again. They might be flying to Chabahar.
Yeah, that's interesting. They turn off their transponder. What about the second one? Is it still on back there, the one that's not over the Iranian airspace yet?
This one's transponder is still on. It's currently flying over Turkmenistan. But their flight paths, they both, actually, this one came from Moscow, and this one, we don't even have information of where it came from, but I'd assume Moscow. I would assume both of them are from Moscow. But it looks like they're heading into southeastern Iran. And I don't really know why they would be doing that,
I don't
because
think so. It's a feint. They have probably either swung a hard left or probably most likely a hard right. Actually, this aircraft right here did. They could have headed toward Tehran possibly, or they could have headed toward Bushehr. They're trying to throw people off because they turn off the transponder like back there. They could have made a right turn back when they turned it off and gone straight to Tehran from that location.
yeah, they could have. They did squawk their position there for just a moment right there. So they are still kind of generally flying in a straight line a little bit for now. But they might swing it over hard right towards Chabahar and go pick up all of the Russian workers and scientists that are there, because these IL-76s, if I'm not mistaken, they can carry about 120 people each, which would be just about enough to get all of the scientists and also the construction workers that the Russians sent down that are, specialized in nuclear technology and nuclear reactor construction on these planes and out of the country. I mean, the fact that they're heading specifically into Iran is pretty telling, because if they wanted to head elsewhere, they could have just flown, well, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'm highly likely believing that they're flying somewhere into Iran, possibly highly likely to Chabahar, because if we look at Chabahar, there is an airfield that they can use there. Let me get up here. Actually, sorry, Bushehr, not Chabahar. But up here at Bushehr, they do have the Bushehr International Airport, which I believe is only about like 16 miles from the nuclear power plant. And they could have had all of the Russians sitting here at this airport waiting for the IL-76s to pull up. They're going to load them all up, and they're going to send them out and get them out of the country. So I guess if that is the case, the U.S. just told the Russians, you need to get your people out there immediately. And probably didn't give them any further detail than that, I would assume, because if they gave them any more than that, the Russians are going to go, they're going to bomb you. They're going to go tell the Iranians. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Also, by the way, since this is already public, somebody's already blabbed and said something. It's just their speculation. They claim they heard it from an official source, but the guy who's out there claiming it could be Monday or Tuesday, it looks like that could have some credibility to it, because we're seeing last-minute cargo flights take place today, which we believe are likely last-minute air defense deployments to protect embassies. So that indicates it's probably not going to be Sunday, which is tomorrow. Definitely not going to be tonight. Absolutely not. So probably not going to be Sunday. It could actually be Monday or Tuesday. If that prediction turns out to be accurate, that could be the way it plays out, which would be unusual. Like I mentioned before, usually attacking on a Monday or a Tuesday is very odd. That would be highly unusual, but it's looking plausible based on what we're seeing here. This is a massive indicator, the Russians heading down here like this.
It certainly is. And moving on from that, we are going to be getting back into the rest of our news, but that is a fairly interesting development to say the least. Moving on out of that, though, it is time for us to get on back towards Ukraine and on into our news inside of Lviv. Unfortunately, there was some form of a terrorist attack that did happen within the area. There was apparently 2 explosions, which created a large amount of casualties, and we have heard that some Ukrainian citizens unfortunately died in these explosions. But currently, the Ukrainian authorities are launching a full-scale investigation to try and ascertain the exact reason as to why this happened and who did it. A very unfortunate situation, to say the least. Moving on from that clip and out of Lviv and that unfortunate news, we are now going to be moving on over into the location unknowns, where we were able to see a Ukrainian Caesar SPG at work. This has been provided to the Ukrainians by the French Republic and has been used by the Ukrainian Armed Forces since 2023. Pretty interesting little artillery system, and really the pinnacle of modern day self-propelled artillery, and really cool to see it still in use in Ukraine. We also got to see a Russian Buhanka, aka a Rodnik. Jesus.
Oh my God, Bliat, look at this. Is that really the chassis of a Buhanka?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God, it's like a go-kart.
It is. It is like a go-kart. It's terrible looking. It's awful. And rough indeed. Rough indeed. Rough as hell. Moving on from that, we also got to see a modified C-72. We're putting this in as an honorary Rodnik, because I've never seen something like this before. I don't even know what to describe this thing as. I'm speechless and lost for words on it. But moving on from that, it is also time for us to get to the Russian casualty report. And over the past 24 hours, the losses have been pretty decent. According to Miss DC, keeper of the records, 1,527 drones shot down is the 3rd highest daily loss. A Ka-27 helicopter was hit by a drone in Crimea on the 17th, adding to the report, and 183 vehicles is the 14th highest daily loss. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to confirm that 1,010 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 3 APCs, 183 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 42 artillery pieces, 1,527 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 helicopter, and that was it. Still a pretty decent day, and good to see that they're, of course, making sure to rake them on in, as far as the losses on the Russian side, that is. We also got to see the Ukrainian armed forces were targeting and hitting Russian equipment just across the border from Kharkiv, including this Skladovike, which is a vehicle.
Just meant to blast my ears out there for a minute.
Yeah, man, it blew my eardrums out as well. I'm just pretending like I'm all right. Ooh. Oh, now they're getting into the building. It's like, look, Ural 4320 with the Kharkiv front marking. So this is definitely in the Vovchansk area. And they hit the fuel tank, which then combusted the building. Toasty. Keep them warm in the winter months, Moving on out of that clip and on into our next one in near Kupiansk, we also were able to see the Ukrainians in the 114th Territorial Defense Forces slamming Russian artillery. This is the most effective counter battery that we have seen in the modern age, is drone-based counter battery.
Also, by the way, I'm the very first person on Twitter to post about the Russian emergency services going into Iran. Very happy, very happy.
Really? Is that
Yes.
true? Would you like to get recognition for that on air? Because that is quite a big achievement there, to be the first to catch something like that. Like, this is actually kind of a little bit
I'm
of an
always
important...
first.
Oh, you are?
I'm joking. No, I'm just joking.
I'm always first. I was like, okay. I was like, all right, well, if you say so. I mean, I said, if you say so, hey, who am I to disagree with you? But moving on down to Konstantinivka, we also get to see the Ukrainians helping the Russians to clear out a bomb. The Ukrainians had an interesting little miracle today, in a way. The Ukrainian police did, at least. The Russians tried to drop a Fab 500 on the Ukrainian positions, and they ended up falling the bomb a little short, and it ended up landing on a Russian trench. But luckily for the Russians in the trench, it was a dud and it didn't explode. But the Ukrainians decided that such an unexploded ordnance of this size generally poses an imminent threat to the safety of Ukrainian soldiers. And therefore, they went out and made sure to hit it with a drone to blow it up and make sure that the Ukrainians would be safe not only from the bomb, but from the Russians nearby. Nice.
Oh,
a marmot.
Oh, look,
Hey!
it's a thing.
Alan, yes. Oh man. But moving on from that and on down into Donetsk, we also got to see a situation evolving in Donetsk. Let's take a look. Oh, that sounds like air defense. Oh, that sounds like a lot of air defense. And maybe even some falling debris, perhaps. Well, I guess they can't win them all, the Russians. They can't win them all. The Ukrainians also retook more ground today within the southern front near Zaporizhia. We were able to confirm that the Ukrainians have recaptured the village of Stepove, near to the area of Berezove, and also the towns of Zaporizhskoye and Kamensheva Vaha, I believe if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is very good to see. Moving us on further down and into Mariupol, we also were able to hear of explosions from Ukrainian attacks in Mariupol.
Только что автоматные очереди были, блядь. Вот.
Oh, a little air defense.
Дожились, блядь. На нахуй. Прилет, ебать. Заебись. Ой, еще один нахуй. Это уже какой по счету пятый нахуй.
Well, not going well in Mariupol. We also got to see that the Ukrainians blew up a Tornado MLRS. This is a 300mm multiple launch rocket system. We can actually see it firing right there. And soon, they're about to get fired. There's a picture.
You're fired. You're fired. Get out of here. Get your stuff and box it up and get out.
Welcome to The Apprentice, where today we're going to decide who is my foreign policy advisor. You there, what do you say? Let's avoid all wars in the Middle East. Great idea. All right, let's go with this whole thing. Say that you're the king of peace, but go to war at least 3 times in your first year. Brilliant idea. All right, any other suggestions? Let's take credit for ending wars that America had very little involvement in. Wonderful. It's like, this is all great.
They said they landed in Hawaii. They said they're going for a little vacation in Hawaii. They said we landed on the island. We're on the island. It's a great place down here on the island. It's a wonderful place out here in the middle of the ocean. There's not a whole bunch of trouble out here. Not a whole bunch of trouble.
Now that I've been involved in the investigation, I'm completely excited about it, but I can't even get farther into that one. Oh, man. But we can see them here, you know, really doing some work on that tornado down there. And that's the end of that clip. But with that, folks, it's now time for us to circle on up to Kyiv and get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Here in a minute, this thing's about to load. How's y'all doing today? Y'all doing well? Oh, man. I hope
Also, by the way, I love it. I love it. The LSA in the chat, they heard me saying I was the first on Twitter. They went over there and immediately started putting the comments below it. They say, congratulations to Enforcer Matt. Honestly, I feel so gracious for this, by the way. I've made 45,000 posts on Twitter over the last couple of years I've been running the page, which sounds rather manic, and it could possibly be, but it paid off.
Meanwhile, Zelenskyy's looking at him in the thumbnail going, that was a good job that you did. Very good.
I feel like you're judging me for the 45,000 posts. He said, I don't know if you have the cards, but he has the posts.
This blood has lost his composure. Send him to the front now. But anyway, without further ado, here is the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And so here's the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні є кілька важливих речей, про які варто сказати. Перше, ми продовжуємо кожен день працювати спеціально, щоб наступний раунд перемовин міг принести результати для України, принести результати для миру. Україна точно зробить для цього все необхідне і перепоною для миру точно не буде. Минулого разу в Женеві американська сторона чітко побачила, що саме в росіянах причина відсутності дійсно значимих результатів. І наступну зустріч треба зробити не пустою. І це можливо. Ми проговорили сьогодні з Рустемом Умєровим деякі аспекти підготовки перемовин. Я вдячний усім, хто реально готовий допомогти та підтримує нас, хто підтримує нашу державу. І вже заплановані також мої зустрічі на наступному тижні з європейськими партнерами. Ми будемо детально координувати, щоб Європа була в усіх процесах і ставала тільки сильніше. Я доручив Рустему також більше попрацювати з нашими друзями на Близькому Сході і в Туреччині, щоб там відчували свою залученість та могли допомагати більше. Я говорив також сьогодні з Марком Рюте, генсеком НАТО. Багато в чому у нас спільні погляди на дипломатичний процес, на ситуацію в Європі. Дякую тобі, Марку. І друге, що важливо, я хочу відзначити роботу Служби безпеки України, також Національної поліції, також Офіс Генерального прокурора. Вдалося знешкодити російських найманців, які готували замахи на наших громадян. Доволі гучні імена. І те, що такі злочини вдалося попередити, вагомий результат. Були доповіді Олександра Поклада, і це ще один фронт постійного захисту безпеки України, захисту українців, постійного захисту життя наших людей. Те, як наші українські спеціальні служби, наші правоохоронці, наша розвідка знешкоджують російську злочинну активність проти українців. Зараз готували замахи проти українських військових, українських розвідників, українських медійників. Важливо, щоб саме так у взаємодії всі наші українські спецслужби, наші правоохоронці захищали українських громадян і надалі. Ще одне. Сьогодні є нові санкції України проти капітанів тих суден, які займаються перевезенням російської нафти. 225 капітанів. Ми послідовно будемо впроваджувати санкції та робити їх глобальними проти всіх тих, хто допомагає Росії заробляти гроші на війну. Багато хто в світі нас підтримує. Часто саме українські пропозиції в основі санкцій партнерів. Ми дуже розраховуємо, зокрема, що і наступний санкційний пакет Євросоюзу буде враховувати те, що потрібно для реального тиску на Росію за цю війну, для реального обмеження можливості Росії воювати. Це стосується в тому числі бану морських сервісів для суден, які використовує Росія. Варто до цього прийти Європі. І це те, що могло би стати значним стимулом від Європи для Росії таки перейти від війни до дипломатії, до справжньої дипломатії. Війну треба закінчувати. Я хочу дякувати всім, хто нам допомагає. Дякую вам. Слава Україні!
Heroes Slava.
And also, are you good over there, man?
I thought I was muted.
Bro,
I'm sorry, by the way. I didn't mean to interrupt Zelenskyy like that. I saw the plane took a right, and it shocked me. I turned over to the screen and saw it make a right, and I thought I was muted when I just did that.
Bro,
So sorry.
blood turned into a dog. He went, bro, I was like, what the hell? You good? I was like,
Man, I saw that plane take a right. I looked over to the left on my side screen. I saw that plane making a right, and I tell you what, it caught me off guard.
oh man, this thing's going to Boucher.
It's going to Bushehr, it looks like,
Yeah.
if this is true.
Well, I mean, right now it's actually going straight to Bandar Abbas, but it's making that turn. And if we ping it again and it's going this way, like this direction towards Shiraz, it's going to Bushehr and it's picking up the nuclear scientists and also the construction workers from Russia. So, it looks like this is getting a lot more likely that this is a Bushehr evacuation that we're watching live on air right now. We're going to keep an eye on this, folks, in the meantime. But outside of that, it is time for us to move on and into our question section, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I hope that y'all have enjoyed our news segment tonight. It has been an absolute honor, as usual, for both of us to be able to run this news segment for all of y'all tonight. I have to say that we're entirely honored to see that about 25,000 people are here with us live, and we've gotten about 190,000, actually 191 as of right now, 1,000 views on this channel so far in just about 2 hours and 20 minutes. We're always incredibly honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all consider this channel to be your primary source of news, and we are very proud to be that once again tonight. If y'all have enjoyed it a whole lot, you know what to do. You know what to do. You make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've almost gotten 1,000 new subscribers today. Now, that's a lot of subscribers. And we hope that we are able to welcome all of y'all with a warm embrace into our daily news coverage, which some people think is a little stressful and overwhelming with what's going on in the world, but to us, it's literally just a normal Saturday, or a Tuesday, whichever way you want to put it. But with that in mind, it is time for us to start moving on into all of these tremendous and incredible questions that we have in front of us. And of course, folks, we can talk about anything and everything that you'll want to talk about. The world is our oyster, all of our oyster, except for topics that revolve around religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. And I will have to say that while that's a very contentious topic, I think one thing everyone can agree on is that the A-10 does go pretty hard, and that A-10 on our thumbnail looks pretty baller tonight. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping here onto our super chat questions, we're moving right back into them while I keep an eye out for breaking news. We are currently jumping into our first one, which goes to none other than Crazy Fingers, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support, and we appreciate that very, very much. He said 20,000 watching, 1.8 thousand likes. Come on, everyone. These guys deserve at least a like for the effort and time they put into this. Thank you, guys. From a proud, I think West Virginia son of a Vietnam veteran and RIP dad. And he would have appreciated your videos.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the incredibly high praise. And I gotta say, rest in peace to him as well. The generation that's now starting to disappear little by little is the folks from Vietnam. First, it was the folks from World War II, and then Korea right after, and now it's the Vietnam era veterans. But I do have to thank you tremendously for your incredible support, and I want this channel to keep on running. And I gotta thank you so much for the kind words. We try our hardest to make sure that the news is of a high quality and well researched, and I'm glad to know that a lot of people find it to be a good all-around show. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I thank you so much for being here with us tonight and really enjoying the show and the amount of work and effort that we put into it to be able to cover this news. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And before we move on to the next one, I also want to say we're actually going to keep the screen on these flights here at this point on the show, because we are waiting. We are just waiting for this thing to turn towards Bushehr. I think it is. Like, it highly likely looks like it will be. Or I just realized something else, Matthew. They might be dropping off Russian naval personnel for the Stoiki, because if they go to Bandar Abbas, that might also be what they're doing as well.
They wouldn't send them on this aircraft, though. From a Ministry of Emergency Affairs aircraft, they would not send them on that. I don't think.
I mean, they might not, but it is Russia after all. So, I mean, you know, all the government departments are just whatever they want them to be used for. But it is an interesting development. That is to say the least. This is actually these two aircraft right here are the most tracked flights in the world right now, are these Ministry for Emergency Situations IL-76s. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, if you were curious about that laser satellite that can spot submarines, by the way, I do have the article. I have one all the way back from 2018 when they literally didn't know very much about it at all, and the military really wasn't taking it that seriously back in 2018. I'm sending you the link to it right now from Discord, so that way you can take a look at it and you can see the article.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. All right. I'm going to take this off screen really quickly, folks, and read this. If you want to talk to the folks, Matthew, you can, but I'm going to give just a quick look over and see what it was talking about.
So the project, the official name for it is Project Guanlan. That's the name. It's a satellite system that China plans to fully deploy. We don't even know how far along it is, but it's something they're actively working on. And they're making satellites that can detect submarines 1,640 feet below the surface of the water, which is a lot deeper than anything the U.S. or Russia or anybody else has ever been able to accomplish. So it uses lasers. Obviously, we do know that for a fact. And apparently they've had some pretty decent success, because I have heard, not just the Chinese saying it, I've heard a U.S. military briefing about the threat of this system. So the Chinese, of course, could lie. They could say they're developing something for propaganda reasons and it actually has no real viability to it. But the U.S. military is taking it seriously like it is real. And obviously we don't know exactly what the U.S. military has when it comes to intelligence about whether or not this is real or not. So I would say the fact they're briefing on it probably indicates it's real. And if this is real, with something being able to reach that far below the water and image a submarine down there, that's revolutionary. Now, that could actually change submarine warfare a lot, because previously you had to have microphones in the water to detect submarines. That was one main way to pick it up, was on sound. And now apparently you can do it from a satellite, or at least that's the theory behind it.
I would have to say really quickly, I can't really find any U.S. sources talking particularly about that. If you can find that, that would be good, because it looks like the article that you sent me, it's quoting the South China Morning Post, which is generally kind of like a Chinese affiliated, or basically like communist Chinese run sort of a paper. And it literally
It's from 2018.
Well,
it's from a long time ago. The military has a briefing on it. I think it was the Army, I believe, that gave the briefing possibly about this. It's a video briefing though. It's not in an article. So I would have to go grab the video, and we couldn't show it on the air, obviously. But I would have to go grab the video, and you have to watch it probably off the air.
Yeah, and I mean, also on top of that, I'd have to say, like, usually Chinese claims are fairly erroneous. And also, another thing that I have to point out is that the military works off of whatever our adversaries say that they have. We don't have to have information or knowledge that it really is that good. If they say we have the super weapon, the military is going to go, "Oh my God, they have a super weapon." They're going to take it at face value, because that's what they've done historically with most every weapon system that an adversary has made, like the MiG-25, which the Russians claimed was kind of a super jet, and when we looked at it, we kind of thought it was a super jet. Well, actually, we believed up front it was an absolute super jet, and then we poured tons of money into developing the F-15. And then once we finally got our hands on a MiG-25, we found out the thing was junk and it wasn't capable of doing anything the Soviets said it could do. But outside of that, I have to say that Chinese claims are fairly hard to believe, because I mean it's literally just been a few days ago. They've now announced that they have China just launched a whole bunch of satellites that are able to achieve speeds of the Starlink internet system 5 times over in the same moment of time. So it's like China always says, "Oh, look, America did this thing and then we did it 50 times better," and then they never do.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I wouldn't underestimate China though. Like I understand every country puts out propaganda about what they have, because there's always an element of trying to scare the enemy into believing that you're more powerful than you truly are. But China has made actual real milestones. We can't write everything off they're doing, because, like, for example, they deployed back in 2020 a satellite constellation that actually allows you to communicate using quantum physics, and it actually works. It's an ultra secure link between 2 ground stations and a satellite that can pretty much not be hacked for the most part, or at least we don't have any current capabilities to hack that system. So that was back in 2020, and they've perfected it even further in 2023, and also last year as well. They've made them smaller and also a lot more efficient from what they're saying. So that's been something that has been proven. They've done that, and that was believed to be impossible just like 5 or 10 years ago, and China actually pulled that off, and that's been confirmed.
I mean, well, confirmed by them or who?
by our military.
But you were just saying that the Chinese were saying that they could do these things.
Well, yeah, but you're getting mixed up though. I'm talking about the quantum communication satellites. There's also that LiDAR one we're also talking about as well. It's two different systems.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about the comm system with the quantum computing. If we can't even get into the system to know what it does, how will we know what it does or how it works? Or if it even like, it might just be like a satellite for another purpose or just a satellite that has good encryption and we really don't know how to break through it. And then the Chinese say it's quantum computing because I don't really get how China doesn't even have a lithography machine, but they're then going to be capable of quantum computing before we are. When,
Well, well, I mean, we have stuff. We don't have lithography machines. We can't create those ourselves here in the USA, but we also have technologies that would be revolutionary in other categories. Like the US is the leader in quantum computing right now. Our private companies are really good at that, but at the same time, those companies can't create lithography machines. That's an entirely different expertise. So I wouldn't write the stuff off. Like I know people want to write the stuff off saying, oh, China's making it up. We can't afford to write that off. And the military has not written it off. They're taking it seriously. And also, you got to remember, there are sources within China that we do communicate with as a country that are spying on behalf of the United States that we get information from as a government. So they have abilities to confirm this stuff, whether or not it's a real capability or not, at least with a decent probability of likelihood behind it. And I don't think the U.S. would simply, run with something like that unless they had some type of intelligence to prove that it was a real capability.
Well, I mean, we've historically run with all kinds of stuff that isn't true. Like the MiG-25 is probably the greatest example I can come up with over and over. Is that we were saying, like, if you go back and read articles that were written when the MiG-25 was first unveiled, every single news publication in America and every single military official was going, the Russians didn't just catch up to us; they've now beat us in terms of air superiority fighters. This thing is a super maneuverable, super capable air superiority fighter. It completely dominates anything in the U.S. military, and we have to come up with something fast or else they're going to screw us over if we get into a war. And then we developed the F-15, and then 10 years after the F-15 went into service, a Russian in 1985 defected with the MiG-25 and landed in Japan, and we ripped the entire MiG-25 apart piece by piece, looking it over, and we found out that the entire thing sucked. And for years, we literally put all of our money into the F-15 program only, like the F-15 only exists because of how the U.S. military thought the MiG-25 was just that good. And that's how the military works. If we hear China say we have a missile system that goes Mach 25, it can pull a 50G turn, and then it can hit the U.S. Capitol in like no time at all, the U.S. military is going to go, okay, we need a Mach 55 missile that can do a 60G turn and hit Beijing in no time at all, and the Politburo headquarters, and we need to have that soon. So let's pour tons of money into it, and then when we finally get our hands on whatever weapon system that is, then we find out it's like a Mach 10 missile. It can maybe pull 30 Gs. It might be able to do something, but it also would probably be shot down, and it was completely pointless, and it was just nothing but hype.
I personally, like, I'm fully, like, I'll say it again, I'm fully aware that China puts out propaganda, but I would not write this satellite technology off at all. Like, in fact, I would say their quantum communications with satellites is probably a real capability. I would say it sounds real to me, and also the military seems to think it's real. And this LiDAR system, remember also, by the way, you remember when those strange sightings of green lasers were happening, like on Hawaii and things like that? You remember that back like a few years ago?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was believed to be a Chinese LiDAR satellite that was trying to map the surface of Hawaii. That was what that was believed to be. And there is a LiDAR out there. It's called bathymetric LiDAR, which can actually penetrate water, the surface of water. I think it's been proven, I think, commercially to reach depths of 25 meters into clear water conditions. But also, by the way, that aircraft's turning a little bit. We'll get to that in just a second, though. But there is a LiDAR that can penetrate the water, and that's just the commercial capability. We don't know what the militaries of the U.S. or China has come up with that they have not released publicly yet. Now, who knows what either one of them have? It could be something a lot more potent than what we're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, but I don't know. Like, I just don't really buy a lot of Chinese claims because the U.S. military goes, this thing is pretty crazy. And then they basically repeat what the Chinese said, and the Chinese basically lie about everything that they have. Because they even lie about their equipment. Like, they'll say stuff like, oh, Chinese infantry equipment, it's so good. And then when you actually look at it, it's bad. Like it's really bad. Like even their infantry equipment's pretty bad. We know that there's a lot of corruption in China. Like for example, they have some of the most cutting edge nuclear submarines built in the modern world, and one of them just came back a while ago after a third of their crew was almost dead and the rest of them were dying from radiation poisoning because the reactor was built improperly, which has been a historical problem on basically all Chinese nuclear submarines and still hasn't been fixed 50 years later, ever since they made their first one. And they still have endless issues like that in multiple ways, and that makes me believe that these sorts of extremely high tech or highly advanced sorts of systems probably only exist on paper, or they only exist in propaganda, because most of the conventional systems that they've had for decades, they still haven't been able to sort out the kinks, like major radiation leaks and other stuff like that, or even how in the world an infrared sight on a rifle would work. Because while we use I believe it's a analog system, they use a digital system, which is far cheaper, but it also
For
produces
what? For what?
for infrared sights on rifles.
A digital. So, how? What? Wait a minute. I know. How's that work?
I don't know how it works, but I was watching a video explaining it because they actually started to talk about it, because funnily enough, some of those systems made it into America and the resolution is like half as good as an American system.
Well, for an infrared like transmitter on a rifle?
Yeah, for like an infrared scope.
An infrared scope? Do you mean like a night vision sight? Like when you say an infrared scope, like what do you mean?
Like an infrared scope. Like a scope that operates on an infrared spectrum. Like a scope that runs on the thing called infrared. You know, they give an image like this.
Oh, you're talking about thermal scopes.
Thermal infrared. I mean, aren't they basically the same thing?
I think infrared is night vision. Thermal, I think, is different. I'm pretty sure. Thermal detects heat. I mean, it's in the name.
Let's see here. Let's see. So infrared is best for low light visibility, whereas thermal excels in detecting specific heat signatures. So it does appear that you're right. But the thermal scopes that they have work off of a digital system, which is cheaper. Ours work off of an analog system, which is more expensive. But while they're able to field the same amount of units at a cheaper cost, they still have a lot less quality, which those sorts of quality aspects will really show up pretty badly when you get into a firefight and a U.S. soldier is able to easily identify a Chinese soldier 400 yards away, and the Chinese soldier is trying to discern in the thermal scope whether that's an American or not. You know, and it's like those sorts of differences mean a lot. And so China could say, oh, we have the super duper quantum computing hyperspace drive satellite, and then it only works like half the time. You know, like that's the thing to me, you know, at least, you know, it's like that's kind of the issue that I have with China, is that they kind of hype everything up like that. Like they say that their tanks are great, and their tanks are built with the same Soviet ammo carousel design that the Russians make theirs off of, and those things go up like Roman candles and have no crew survivability, you know, and yet they claim those things are great, you know, and then they claim that about everything else. So I don't really believe a lot of what the Chinese say. Like, we have to work off of what they say and generally build a counter to it, but like believing it wholeheartedly, I put very little salt into what the Chinese say.
Do you know what's fascinating, since you're talking about thermal and night vision? Both of those technologies generally were pioneered, or at least the base technologies behind those systems were developed in Hungary. Did you know that?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah, both thermal imaging was generally developed in Hungary, and also night vision generally had multiple inventors, but the main inventor is credited to a Hungarian physicist. So both of those systems pretty much in Hungary.
Let me see if I can find you the old East German night vision scope, because it was crazy to look at. It's not this one. Let me pull up the East German one, because the East Germans had this absolutely crazy one. East German. Yeah, well, actually, this is actually from World War II, but the Germans had a prototypical and very rarely issued night vision scope. This was it. It usually was mounted onto STG-44s, but I mean, this thing was absolutely unreal, and it also required that giant battery pack as well to operate.
Yeah, that is something right there. I've always wanted a thermal sight, like not necessarily for like a weapon sight, but just like thermal binoculars or a monocular or something like that. But it's just so expensive. Like the thermal stuff is expensive as hell. Night vision's a lot cheaper, but night vision is not as cool though, because you know you're seeing through infrared, and it's not as good as thermal in my opinion. So it's just so expensive. But I would love to have that though.
Yeah, that would be really cool, honestly. It would be really neat. But man, I gotta say, man, the Germans at the end of World War II said, "Ah, yes, we're having trouble seeing in the night, so let's get the car headlight and the giant telescope. Let's put that on top of the rifle. Let's see how that does." It's like, I feel like that has a problem with, like, controllability, you know? Like, I bet you that
Yeah.
thing was heavy as hell. Like, you know, like,
Probably so, honestly. Also, by the way, I want to say something. I see many people saying quantum is good for hacking and stuff like that. Quantum can't be hacked that well, like quantum communications and stuff like that. That is part of the reason why all these countries around the world are racing to develop AI, because it's said that with the proper amount of computing power and also with AI, you can generally crack any cryptography out there for the most part, including encryption. So I think that's why they're racing toward it. And also that's a huge risk. Like whichever country gets that technology first can pretty much monitor anybody's communications, which is also a huge problem. So that's why each country wants to be the first to do that. So that way they can obviously keep their communications private.
that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. And with that, folks, it is time for us to get on back into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
And moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Waba, who puts in a 30. And thank you very much, Waba, for that support. He said, stock up on Costco chickens and coffee for the impending World War III coverage.
Oh, and we already have. We were one step ahead of you. We have done that. And I got to thank you, Master, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $28 support from Andreas Forrester. And thank you very much, Andreas, for that 28. We appreciate that. And they said, Canadian Army veteran here and love you guys. And first, I want to ask, what major ground assets are available for the U.S. to attack Iran? And I think any operation will probably be limited to airstrikes. And second, I'm skeptical of regime change.
And I thank you, Master, for the support, and I would definitely agree with you. I think it's going to be airstrikes only, and as far as ground forces, we have really not seen any indication that any ground force units are present within the area, outside of maybe some Special Forces units from Special Forces Command, but we haven't really seen any regular military units that would be able to conduct a larger ground war with Iran, so we're thinking that that's not really in the cards at the moment. We're also thinking that it's primarily just airstrikes alone. So I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least in my opinion, and a big thanks to you once again for support, and help with this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $28 support from Sensor007. And thank you very much, good sir, as well, for that support. I say, hello, Enforcers. I've been a silent viewer since pretty much day one. I love the show. And a few streams ago, you explained why you name countries by their full name. So why are you calling the Russia-Ukraine war the Ukraine war, aggressor-victim?
So the Ukraine war is called the Ukraine war because the war is being fought entirely almost within Ukraine. So whenever we talk about the active war, it's really more so inside of Ukraine than Russia. Instead of the Russia-Ukraine war, it's more so just the Ukraine war. That's why it's really called that. It's kind of similar to how you don't hear of, say, the invasion of Poland being called, the German invasion of the Polish state, from back then, because the entire invasion of Poland occurred within Poland's borders. So that's kind of the similar sort of a principle that we're using here. And also, it's a lot more recognizable to say the Ukraine war, because, if we're going to emphasize anyone out of the two, it will be the Ukrainians, because it's a war for their own independence. It's kind of like how the Revolutionary War in the United States is called the American Revolution instead of the American-British War for Independence, is because the United States of America, or at least the future United States of America, was where the entire war was fought and was the primary focal point of the conflict. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And I hope that you've been enjoying this channel for a long time. But as far as official country names, to also address that as well, I try and use that as much as I possibly can, because I think the name of a country tells a lot, and that's something that a lot of people don't really do. People will just say Russia, Poland, Germany. They'll just say the conventional names, like the easy and quick names. But if you say something like the Republic of Poland or the Islamic Republic of Iran or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, their official names actually tell a lot about how that government operates, how it's formed, how it functions, all just within a name. Like, especially for people who may know a little bit about those sorts of governmental systems. Like if you say the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, well, for one, we know that they're probably going to be fairly conservative as a result of that, and they're not going to be looking for a heavy amount of innovation or a social change as a result. Another thing that we know is that it's an authoritarian government, meaning that it's run by a singular person, meaning that there's probably a great deal of inefficiency within that sort of a system. We'd also be able to tell a good bit more about how their military would operate as a result of that, and so on. And then if I say say something like the Islamic Republic of Iran, you can get the idea they're definitely a theologically driven government, one that also falls under some sort of a dictatorship, a lot like any other democratic people's republic or something in the world, or a people's republic. Those would also be authoritarian as well. And you can also understand that they're not going to fall under a line of logic or reasoning because they're entirely driven by theological ambition or ideals, and they probably run their nation with an iron fist because anything that falls out of their theological framework would be considered heresy or some sort of an act against God and so on. And then if you say something like the People's Republic of China or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, you know, you get the similar sorts of inferences. You know, and what's interesting though is that there's very few countries that do not have an official name like that. And funnily enough, Ukraine is actually one of them. Ukraine does not have an official name, like say the Republic of Ukraine or something along those lines. It is just the state of Ukraine. That's it. Similar thing with Israel. Israel is also just the state of Israel. And Canada, interesting enough, is also the same as well. It's just Canada with no official name anymore. So it's a little interesting with that because you really can't infer anything out of those countries, so you kind of have to dig deeper to know about what their governments are and how they operate and function. But outside of that, basically every other country tells you a lot about how it's governed, operates, functions, and thinks from its official name, which is why I always think it's important to put emphasis on it and also say that, because it gives a little bit more of a character to the country that we talk about. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next support goes to Michael Mervahill. And thank you very much, Michael, for that $25 support. And we appreciate that very much. He said, are Reserve and National Guard air elements being activated or alerted for the possible call-up?
I haven't heard about that, and I think that would probably be an operational security thing if we had, so I wouldn't really be able to comment on that all too much. But a big thanks to you for the support, and I want this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from My Trucking Travels. And thank you very much, good sir, also for the support. He said, good evening, my friends, and just your friendly overnight truck driver again from Houston to Albuquerque. And LSA forever, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support from Houston to Albuquerque. Albuquerque. I'll say Albuquerque?
Albuquerque, yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it's definitely Albuquerque.
Hold up, I gotta pull this up. Like, for some reason, I can't really remember. Hold up. Let's see here. Pronunciation. All right. So, here we go.
Albuquerque.
And then the British say it? How do the British say it?
Albuquerque.
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 but it is Albuquerque. For some reason, I always thought of it as Albuquerque. And the UE at the end was silent. But it is Albuquerque. That's interesting. And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I hope this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, one hell of a desert expanse. And I got to ask you, whenever you go through truth or consequences, do you speak truth or suffer consequences, or does it work the opposite way around? I'm very interested in that. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for being our friendly overnight trucker here on the channel, and I got to thank you massively for the support, and I want this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so a humongous, tremendous thanks to you so much once again. And I also see a lot of people saying, everybody knows it's Albuquerque. I know, but for some reason when Matthew said it, it just sounded odd to me. Like, not the way he was saying it. It was just like, I was like, Albuquerque? That almost sounds like a joke. It's like, okie dokie, like the name of the city.
Man, why are you always putting me down?
I'm not putting you down. I'm not putting you down. It's just that when I actually heard like the name of the city, like in just normal conversation, it made me think, that sounds almost like a joke name, you know, like okie dokie or something like that. I was like, that certainly cannot be the way it's pronounced. And then it is. And then, you know, obviously it is. So I was like, damn. I was like, you know, I don't know. That's like when people say, instead of Los Angeles, they say Los Angeles. Like, it feels like the same thing. I don't know. Like, Albuquerque is an interesting name. But beyond that, though, I do hope that does address it the best I can to our overnight truck driver. And a huge thanks to you once again for support. And I want this channel to keep on running. And also, Dan Brooks said, Bugs Bunny always took a wrong turn there. He did. He always go, I think I took a wrong turn in Albuquerque. And that also, like, when Matthew said it right there, I was like, isn't that how Bugs Bunny said that? I was like, he also said Los Angeles. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that was like a joke on the name. But apparently that's the way you actually pronounce that. But anyways, you know, there's another name like that. Kalamazoo. This town sounds like a joke. Like, if you told me you're going from here to Kalamazoo, I'd be like, that town doesn't actually exist. It does exist. That town actually exists in Michigan. Kalamazoo. I don't even know where the name comes from. They had to call it something along the lines. Also, wait a minute, they have West Eastwood and Westwood. Huh. And then they have
This is
Parched-
Westwood TV.
Oh, I like that. They have Comstock. That's where that's from. I've heard of that
Oh
before.
yeah, they make good peaches and cans and stuff like that. Also, by the way, it looks like that first Russian emergency services flight, it appears to be most likely heading toward Bandar Abbas. But my money is split between Bandar Abbas or Bushehr. I'm not really sure here. I'm not sure why they'd send emergency aircraft, 2 of them, for the naval services. I'm not sure why they would do that. Seems a little bit strange.
Yeah, we'll have to see on that one. It might be doing something around the Stoichi at Bandar Abbas, maybe, because that would be the other Russian asset that's in Iran right now. But really interesting. They haven't started a descent yet, but they might just start a descent once they get closer, so we'll have to see. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to RAR 983, Blitzen at 20 as well. And thank you very much, RAR, for that support. He said for the Cold Brew Fund and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support for the Cold Brew Fund. And you know, it's been years now since I've had a cold brew. It's been about, I think, a year and a half. We moved on to black coffee made from freshly ground beans. And I got to say that it is a humongous improvement in flavor and also quality. And I got to thank you massive for the Cold Brew Fund. And I'm going to put that towards whole coffee beans, pike roast specifically, to put in my coffee machine. And a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I want to point out how dangerous this is. I just turned on all the flights to see on Flight Radar 24 what exactly is around that Russian aircraft on its estimated location. There are commercial flights literally all over the place near that flight, which is dangerous as hell, by the way, because this thing apparently has its transponder off for the most part. So they're flying on visual rules, which, you know, that's a little bit sketchy with a commercial size plane like that. So interesting. The second one, has it turned its transponder off yet? The second Russian emergency flight?
I don't think it was that its transponder was off. I think that it was flying through the pretty much unpopulated desert of Iran, because a lot of the airliners through here have their transponders just basically blip out. Like this one as well. So I think that's what it is.
Explain it. Has it come back into range though yet? Because it looks like it still hasn't been picked up.
No, it's come back into range. It's being picked up just north of Lalazar, and it's being picked up heading towards Bandar Abbas. And the other one up here, it hasn't made it into the dark zone, and its transponder is still being picked up. So let's take a look at, see this? Once they enter this desert area, all their transponders are basically not being picked up.
Now that's a solid catch right there. That's a solid catch. So the Russians are flying safely, believe it or not. They're flying safe. So apparently they are heading to Bandar Abbas, because if that transponder is on, which it appears to be, then they are heading down there toward their naval ships for some reason, which is a little bit strange.
But this looks like a larger air corridor, though, and nothing's really landing at Bandar Abbas. Maybe they're going somewhere else, entirely different, because they're still not descending. They're at 32,000 feet. Which is even higher than they were earlier when we saw them when their transponder was pinging in the north. And they're on the Tehran FIR. So, I don't know. I mean, you don't think they would
evacuate the entire crew of those vessels, or that vessel is down there, and then leave the ship while the strikes are taking place?
If they did that, dude, that's going to be crazy. Like, if they did that, that's going to be insane. They're like, okay, everyone, the war's about to start. It's going to be too dangerous for the sailors who are supposed to fight and die in wars to stay around, so we're going to back them up and leave the boat and come and pick it up later. It's like, that's going to be insane. That's going to be unbelievable. What if they did that?
Well, that'd be embarrassing for one. Also, it could be that they're so scared that maybe there might be like accidental shots being fired between the Russians and the U.S. forces, that they wanted to just get them out of there for the safety of it. I'm trying to come up with a reason, honestly, because at this point, it's not really making sense while they're sending 2 emergency flights to Bandar Abbas. It's not making much sense right now.
No, it's not really making a lot of sense at all. We're going to watch these, because I'm honestly kind of feeling like, Matthew, these things might not even stop in Bandar Abbas, because it's not descending at all, and it's getting pretty close. I mean, up there where it's at right now, let me take a look at this, because, you know, in other places, a descent would start like 100 miles out or so, and I think right now it's well closer than 100 miles. Right now, this thing, where it's at, which is near that town, let me go get that again. So it's near this Estefan something. So let me see if I can find it. Let me see here. So they're over here. So there's the road to surround. Okay, so there's the road to surround. So they're going to be over here somewhere. So let me measure this thing out from here. Measure distance to about here. I mean, they're like 40 miles away at 32,000 feet. So unless they were going to do just like a spiral descent in one spot all the way down right outside of Bandar Abbas, which they could do, but usually most airlines and most aircraft don't do that. I don't know what they're doing. I think they might even be bypassing Bandar Abbas and just flying over.
Maybe so, possibly. Do you think they're going to pick up the U.S. officials from the embassy?
The U.S. officials?
Yeah, yeah.
What are you trying to get at
man.
here? Like, what are you trying to get
Well,
at,
you
man?
know, I've heard rumors that apparently some folks here in the U.S. are using FSB software these days. Won't name the company, but I've heard rumors of that. So you never know. It seems like the partnership with Russia might run deep.
What if they're on their way to... I can't even think of anything at all at this point. This is completely eluding me what they would be doing right now.
How close is Timbuktu to those?
Pretty far. Like that's
yeah.
all the way over here. Right here. Timbuktu. Right there.
That's the whole point of the phrase, by the way. It's supposed to be far away. Are you going all the way to Timbuktu?
What does Timbuktu look like these days?
They better look good because people go a long way to get here. Oh, look, there's sewer trucks out here.
Oh, look. Sticks and stones. And then they got this. Oh, they got a megaphone on that thing. They got a megaphone on this mud structure here.
I could do an imitation, but I won't.
Let's see here. And then they have the Republique of Mali. This is also French, by the way. Let's see. Village of Timbuktu, place of independence. Or something along those lines. Let's see here. They have the mud thing lit up with Christmas lights. I don't know what the mud thing is. I know it's somewhat important. I believe it's like an old sort of a trading structure or something along those lines, but I don't know what it is, so I'm just calling it the mud structure. And then we have the riding horseman. I guess that's a trader reference as well. They then have the boat, which appears to have the rib cage of a whale over it for protection. And let's see here. Any other... Oh, so this is the Al-Murani family.
Were the French here at one point?
This is actually a former part of French Africa, so that's why a lot of the signs are in French.
Yeah, I was about to say, it seems like there's some French influences going on here in some parts of the city.
Yeah, it's actually, this is a part of French Africa, and actually, funnily enough, if you go to Africa here in this western part of the continent, you'll find that you will probably get a lot farther speaking French than you would any of their native languages, because most people in this western part of Africa actually speak French as almost one of their primary or secondary languages.
That is interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I don't really think Timbuktu is like the major trading location it was before. Let's take a look around this this mosque down here and take a little look at it. Yeah, it doesn't really seem like it's got a lot of trade going on these days, you know, not a lot of that salt and gold and stuff. I think those days have passed. But it's still pretty interesting. I'll be honest with you, if I lived in a desert, I'd hate that. Like, that's why I can't live anywhere south of Salt Lake, because it turns into a desert. I'm just not a big fan of the deserts, really, you know? Like, let's see if we can get y'all out here into... Oh, wow, they got Timbuktu Airport. So you can actually fly into Timbuktu. Okay, that's kind of cool. Damn, nobody takes, like, any pictures out here or something.
What's that water look like?
Hell, we can't even see. Like, there's no pictures
secret
down
water.
there. Yeah.
Ancient Chinese secret water.
It is an ancient Chinese secret. Damn, dude, there's not a single marker to drop down on in this whole... Let's see here. Good
I bet you
God.
Google Earth would have a 3D of that.
Hold up, we got something.
Have you seen the modern Google Earth, by the way?
No.
Holy crap. Oh, the modern Google Earth is incredible. Like they have updated that system way more advanced than I remember it being.
You know, we can kind of do that here by doing this.
Oh, no. This is nowhere close to Google Earth. Like if you went there right now to Google Earth and opened up a new map, you would see what I was talking about.
Can we do that on air?
Yeah, pull it up on the side screen, Google Earth, and you can get onto it and see it. You can do a 3D of it pretty much anywhere.
Let's see here. Let's take a gander. Let's see here.
Just press, when you
Dang.
get to the Google Earth site, just press select a new map and it'll bring you to it.
1 second. Wow, can I show this on screen?
Like Google Earth, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow! Oh my god! Wow! This is actually pretty crazy. Let's take a look at London in the UK.
Press the 3D button. That's where it really gets crazy. There you go.
Whoa, this is crazy. Look at that. Wow, that is like perfectly detailed. Wow, look
Isn't
at that.
that
They even have
incredible?
the British flag. Dude, that is actually insane.
If you press if you hold the shift key and also move the mouse around, you can change the perspective angle.
Okay, let's see here. I'm holding shift. Oh, here we go. So it's just middle mouse. You can just do middle mouse and do that. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of Britain's largest landmarks, like say Buckingham Palace. What does this look like? You know, I heard that there's this guy here. His name was, I think, like what is it, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor or something? You know, it's a very interesting sort of a thing going on with that. But I mean, look at this. That's crazy. The detail.
Isn't
Wow.
that insane? Like, can you imagine? Like, can you just imagine the military version of like live satellite data of stuff like this? Can you
Oh,
imagine the
dude.
recon abilities by that? You don't even have to physically go somewhere for recon anymore. You can just hop on your military satellite viewer and see a 3D of literally the live environment of the last satellite passing an area. That's probably incredible.
Let me see. Oh, yeah, so we can actually show you what the mountains kind of look like around Salt Lake from almost like a street view level. So if you're down here, this is what the mountains look like off in the distance. Like, that is exactly...
That's crazy. This is
That's really
satellite
crazy.
modeling.
Dude, this is exactly what they look like. There's the Lone Peak over there, and then there's Pfeifferhorn behind it. Like, that is so crazy. We can actually show... You know what, dude? We can actually show people the Bell Canyon Trail, exactly what it looks like. Let's see. This isn't it. Let's see. Oh, it's over here. It's over here.
Also, people are asking, how do they do that 3D modeling like that? I think that's actually LiDAR that they used to do that. I'm not just saying that because we talked about LiDAR before, but I think that's how they're mapping the 3D contours like this. And also, obviously, technology's gotten better, so it can map this stuff. But I mean, geez, man, the amount of data that this takes up is probably crazy.
Yeah, it's gotta be just nuts. But dude, look at that. That's the Bell Canyon. See, that's the trail, like right there, where we walked along the lake to this hill, and then we said, oh, let's go up the mountain. And then we made it all the way about right up to here, and then we came back down the trail. I mean, hell, you can probably see the whole trail from here too. I mean, that's a... Dude, this is insane, honestly. I mean, look at this. There's the trail right there that we were on. And there it is winding
That is
through.
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and
So
then
everybody's saying go to Area 51. Everybody wants to do that every time they go on Google Maps or Earth or something. It's like immediately go to Area 51. But bring them there, and let's see.
let us go see. Let's take a look. I mean, my mind is immediately, let's go look at places that we've been to in real life and see what it looks like. And there was, go to Area 51. So we will go to Area 51. Let's see. Where would it be from here, Matthew? Help me
That's
out.
it. I think you were right on it.
No, that wasn't it. No, that wasn't. Oh, wait a minute. Nope.
Look for the dry lake bed. Zoom out a little bit.
Bruh, this place is filled with dry lake beds, man. Like, look for the dry lake bed. The whole state of Nevada is one.
Okay, look for Rachel.
Okay, Rachel.
You should see a label for Rachel. It's gonna be off to the left.
Rachel. Where is that? Where would that be?
I think it's gonna be to the right a little bit. Zoom in some more so you can see the label. It's very tiny on my screen. I can barely see anything.
So find out where Area 51 is relative to Tonopah, and then we could just move like northwest, northeast, north, south, and so on.
South.
Okay, south. Okay, we're gonna go south. Okay, let's see here. I'm not seeing a Rachel down here, and we've gotten to the state line now.
Type in a search bar Area 51 and see if it brings you to it, or just Groom Lake. I don't know if it.
Dang, dude, that was all the way over here, man.
Hey, man.
Let's see.
Go down and press. Yeah, let's see what they got. Did they model the actual hangars and stuff on this thing? Nope, they did not.
Nope, my only features were, oh, there's the Janet Airlines 737s. Oh, when someone really needs to make some headlines, they'll go, the secret government planes are flying. They fly multiple times every day. But yeah, they didn't model that. I knew they wouldn't. I knew they wouldn't. The government was
We know
like,
what's
"Better not."
fascinating
Like, what?
is if you what's fascinating is if you go on Microsoft Flight Simulator, they actually do model Area 51 because you can actually land at the airport. So they've modeled the hangars and buildings and stuff, but apparently Google didn't.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's think of somewhere else that we can show folks that we've been to. Oh, dude, that Pony Express Trail place. Like, down here near Faust on this road right here. Where's the Pony
Also, by the way, you can close that side tab on the left. See a little thing where you can collapse it right there on the. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Full screen right here.
Where's the Pony Express marker? Let's see here. Do you know where it is out here? In the middle of this markerless area. This markerless land. Oh, wait, there's that little army storage thing. So we were near to this. Okay, we're just going to drop y'all down in here. We'll show y'all what it looks like. So, oh, I got too close. So, oh, got a little too close. So this is what this area looks like out here. And like Matthew keeps talking about. It's just this empty expanse. And there's mountains like way off in the distance everywhere. But they don't feel close when you're out here at all. There's the mountains near Provo. But it's just emptiness. That's the Lone Peak. Well, actually, that's Timpanogos right there, off in the distance. That's Timpanogos. But it looks just like this in real life. It's really crazy.
Yeah, this is target shooting. If you go far enough down the road, you can get out of the shooting enclosure and you can go out there and target practice and stuff.
And then this is the old gold mining town of Merker, which is actually being rebuilt now. Like, you can actually see some new structures and stuff around here. And they're actually going to restart gold mining here, from what I've heard. Here's all the old gold mining pits that they had before it became a ghost town. I mean, this is really cool to look at, man. I mean, like, honestly, it's like, wow, you just
Somebody said, "Man, that's a creeper road right there." This is the place out here. I was telling Andrew, I said, "I'll give him like $100 or something like that if we go stay like the night out there or something in the middle of that area." It's creepy. It's a little off-settling during the day, but at night, I don't even know what it's like at night. Like, I'd be fascinated to see.
Oh, now I can show Matthew why he would fall and die if he tried to climb up this mountain, because I actually got a 3D view. This is what you have to climb up right here, like that. Like,
That's not bad.
That's pretty, dude. That's pretty bad. If you fall, you're dead. Like, you know, like that's pretty dangerous, especially for like a first mountain climbing experience. That's pretty dangerous. I mean, look at this. Like, you got to climb up this, and it's nothing but loose rocks. And then you get to here, and then you got to scramble down this thing, down this steep slope, get onto that, and then make it over here. And this is the absolute peak right there. And also, this is the view that it gets, by the way. Damn, that's actually crazy. Look, you can see the whole Salt Lake.
Man, that would be insane. I need to see that.
Oop, oop. No, get me back on the mountain. I'm trying to get back up here on this thing. Dang. You know, folks, I'm gonna tell y'all something. If you looked really hard, you can see our house from here. Y'all won't know where it is, but it is in Salt Lake City, and from this peak, you can literally see the whole damn city, so it's not really giving it away, but you can see our house from here, so, I mean, that's pretty. And there's the Bingham Canyon mine off in the distance, too. That's that giant, like, sand-looking thing over there in the mountain. And then down there, that's Utah Lake and Provo and all that. And then over here, let me see if I can get y'all on a little view. Oh, dang, this thing's kind of a little touchy a little bit, but... All right, and then if we go over that way, that is downtown Salt Lake. Those are the skyscrapers from downtown Salt Lake. And then way up there, that's Ogden, way up there. So, dude, that is so crazy. I'll actually show you the view, like the best view that we've had, because the farthest we've made it is about, let's see, where would it be? Where's that little bridge? And yeah, we are running a little bit short for time. But the view that we had was... from about right here. This is the view that we had on the mountain once, but that's not even close to the top. So with that, we do have to move on. We are running short on time, but this is wildly interesting and fascinating to look at right here. Oh, wait a minute, man. You can see that Bear Canyon Bridge, can't you? Oh, look.
Probably so, yeah. There it is.
Oh, my
Look
goodness.
at that.
Look at
That's
that
bridge.
Man, that's crazy.
That's pretty cool. It looks a little bit messed up, but I mean, that's it.
Let's see. Let me see if I can show y'all. So this is kind of the view that you get from the Bear Canyon Bridge. And this is 500 vertical feet of elevation from the parking lot to here. Really cool, though. Really neat. But anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to get back into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
Also, by the way, it looks like that emergency flight from Russia is apparently going past Bandar Abbas International. It looks like it's heading for the UAE, perhaps. I can't really tell. It's heading. Let's see. It's making a. We'll have to find out where this thing's going, but it just
Oh, it's
passed Bandar
descending.
Abbas.
It's descending. It's going to Dubai, probably.
Okay, they must be getting their embassy people out. That must be it. But anyways, jumping into our next one. Oh, whoa! What the? It just whipped a U-turn.
We're going to
That's
keep an
not
eye
possible.
on this. We're going to keep it. Oh,
Oh my God, the Russians are indecisive. I can make a
man.
joke right now, but I'm going to get so many people pissed off.
Russian drivers, am I right? But anyway, so that we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jerry Coates, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Coates, for that support. And we appreciate that very, very much. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have an $18 support from Jos Seidman, and thank you very much for the support. They said, first time live viewer, great time, excellent info, and here's a few food and bev bucks. God bless the U.S. military and the IDF, and my son is an American serving in the IDF.
And that's really cool to hear. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And we wouldn't be able to keep this really good news coverage rolling. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Double Tap Ranger Outdoors, who puts in a 14. And thank you, good sir, as well. He said, I liken you two dudes like a couple of radio show hosts from the 30s and the 40s. Such amazing work. And as a Canadian Afghan vet, I listen every time that you're on.
And thank you so much for the high praise and the kind words and the support. And I gotta say, we are always honored to know that we keep up that old class. It's good to know that we do, because I like to think that we are, fairly diamond in the rough sort of out there in the YouTube world. And it appears that generally most people say that we are, and we're always honored for that. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Jimmy Dean, and thank you very much, Jimmy, for that $10 support, and we do appreciate that. And let's see here. Well, wait. I'll just summarize this one. He believes that Israel wants the war. Basically, he's saying Israeli news is propaganda, and he's saying the problem is not bombing Iran; it's the fallout. You're being used for Israel.
I saw that super chat come in earlier. I'm just gonna say it a little bit direct like this. Just because you hate Israel or Jews doesn't mean that the United States has to screw itself over in our own national security interests because you dislike Israel that much. I think that's the best way, again, boil down the counter argument for really a lot of comments like that, because we've made it clear time and time again that this has nothing to do with Israel, because a nuclear weapon could easily kill an American if they have an ICBM, and they are going to make one once they get a nuclear weapon. This has nothing to do with the Israelis. So, I'm sorry that you dislike the Israelis or Jewish people that much that you would screw over Americans despite them, but that's not our problem. So, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Slagoy the Sauce, who said it's not even going to be like Apollo 8. They aren't even going to orbit the moon. They're going to do what's called a free return trajectory.
Really? That's interesting. I thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us, and we'll have to look into that and see if that is the case, because the more I hear about this mission, the less exciting it is, but it is quite interesting to hear about and cool to see nonetheless that we are starting to work towards getting back to the moon. So huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Con45, and thank you very much, Con, as well. He said, we have made advancements in nuclear artillery that has not been tested in decades, and everyone knows our nuclear bombs and missiles are unmatched, and we want to test our advancements in nuclear artillery.
And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and that might be true. We'll have to generally see on that one, though. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chamai is my name, who puts in a 10. They said, hello, enforcers. And they said working again, but I had a question. What do y'all think about the UK not letting the U.S. stage and Diego Garcia citing their unwillingness to facilitate international law breaking actions? Thankfully, Chamoy, thankfully, this situation has been solved. We're simply using Crete as an alternative. So it has been solved. We had a huge debate the other night, and people got riled up like hell over this topic, oddly enough. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's definitely not within America's interest to see that the airbase is closed. But I would have to stick with my guns that generally the reason why that's being done is because we've generally made the British very unhappy with our treatment of them over about the past year or so, and they're generally trying to get back at us for it. So, we can either get more aggressive about what they've done over this, and this is going to make the situation even worse for everything else that requires British cooperation in the future, or we can try and smooth over relations with the Britons again and hope that they generally are pals like they've always been since the end of the First World War, really. Well, really ever since the end of the War of 1812 even. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from none other than Rye Guy SR. And thank you very much, good sir, as well for supporting the channel. He said, y'all rock in LTLSA and Slav Ukraine and long live the Republic. Take one from the chat and proud to be a sane American.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. And we're really proud to know that you're a member of the LSA and a sane American. And so we will take one from the live chat. What do we got, Matthew?
And the one from the live chat goes to Erling Gruel, who said, is there truth to the reports that there are Iranian people welcoming an American attack?
Yes, there is. There's a lot of them welcoming an American attack because they want the Iranian government overthrown. So I would have to say that is definitely something that is really wished upon by the Iranian people, to say the least. And so I hope that does address it well. Big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal, who said, will an attack by Iran on the capitals of different neighboring countries drag those countries into the war?
Generally, that probably would. The answer to that would be yes, highly likely. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I hope our domestic law enforcement agencies are ready for whatever Iran's going to try to pull off once these attacks start happening, because I suspect that they're hopefully, I hope and pray there's nothing that happens, but knowing how Iran works and the tactics they use, who knows what the hell is going to happen here domestically in the United States if Iran wants to retaliate. We'll have to hopefully believe that law enforcement has it under control, hopefully. But jumping into our next one, this one goes to Live Animal, who puts in a 5 once again. He said, if the TELs are in the open on the western border of Iran, are they easy targets for the IDF?
Generally, they kind of would be, but they have to find them. And in the past times in the 12-day war, it actually looked like it was a little bit tough to actually find them. Because while they were able to destroy a third of them, that is still not close to half or overwhelming majority of them. So I hope that is addressed the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Chris Feilbach once again, and thank you very much, Chris, for that support. He said, I was watching the chat tonight, and the messages kept getting moderated, but I could catch a few of them, and people say some really dumb things, and watching their messages just disappear was quite amusing. And isn't it? Honestly, it is nice. It is nice to have the ban hammer. We don't ban people for having opposing opinions, but when people come in bashing and stuff like that, that's not free speech. That's just insults, and there's no reason for that whatsoever. The odd thing is though, like the biggest thunderdome there is not really YouTube chats for live chats. That is, it's really Twitter. Like that's Twitter's like a thunderdome like crazy. Like I've gotten the worst possible replies, not from like YouTube replies, but on Twitter. It seems like Twitter is like just people just like are berserk like that reply and comment on Twitter for the most part. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, there are some really stupid comments that do come through on YouTube and Twitter, and it's always like it just blows my mind because it always amazes me because I'm like, either these are bots that are saying stupid stuff to say it, or these are real people who actually believe this stuff. And considering that there are people out there, Tucker, who do say stuff very similar to what the bots say, I do assume that sometimes these are actual real people who say some of the stupidest stuff. And like it just like it is one, it's good for engagement to respond to them because it gives me something to bounce off of, because when people agree with what we say, like, you know, how, like, you know, it sounds really weird because I just kind of further elaborate why people agree with me and why they do agree with me, and that's really hard to, you know, make work conversationally. But if someone says something really stupid and it's low-hanging fruit, it's easy for me to respond to and also talk about and also spend a little bit more time on the topic and further flesh it out if I want to, which is kind of why I pick those sometimes. But outside of that, some of them are just absolutely goofy, like, stuff like one of those prior super chats where it's like you're a pawn for Israel by looking out for America's interests. It's like comments like that, like the super chat or not, they're just ridiculous. It's like we've laid out plenty of times in the channel why it is within America's interests and stuff, and people will still come in here and just say stuff like right now what's funny, folks, is that we have been called a liberal snowflake channel ever since.
No, don't
no,
do it, man. Don't do it.
No, it's hilarious. It's hilarious because it's the funniest thing. We've been called a liberal snowflake channel basically ever since Trump took office. But now that the Iran war thing's coming around, and we've always been saying that the U.S. has to deal with Iran, now we're saying, oh, this is actually a good thing that's happening. Now we're back to being a hard-right MAGA extremist channel, according to the people who send in the mail. It's really something silly. Like, it's the craziest thing. But yeah, it's always funny to read them, and it's also like mind-blowing to think that sometimes these might actually be real people. It's just unbelievable. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rye Guy SR. He puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, as well, for the second or third support of the night. He said, some funds to help with coffee for the upcoming festivities with Iran. Also, to anyone in our armed forces that's over in the Middle East, stay safe. And thank you for keeping us protected.
And thank you so much for the support, Right Guy SR. And I hope that they do stay safe. I know some folks who are in the armed forces, and hopefully they will stay safe. And I got to say that it's a wonderful and incredible thing that folks like you help to keep this channel running, so that way we can cover the news and the triumphs, and also, unfortunately, some of the Saturdays of what goes on around the world. And I thank you so much for the coffee fund, so that way we can be up and ready to keep covering this news no matter what happens. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, by the way, Matthew, it appears that it is most likely being vectored for an approach towards one of the airports at Sharjah or Dubai, because currently it is still at a pretty decent descent rate at 2,300 feet per minute. It's around 15,000 feet right now, so it looks like they're getting it on down towards a landing approach to the UAE. So crazily enough, it was not an evacuation of Bandar Abbas or Bushehr.
Interesting. That is fascinating. And so apparently they're going to get the embassy folks out.
Yeah, I guess so. That's really weird. And they're sending two of them. Let's see if the other one's... let's see. Yeah, this one's off in the dead zone right now, but it's also going down to the UAE as well. So that is pretty crazy. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to K Bay, who puts in a 5. They said, to all brothers and sisters currently deployed, thank you. Stay safe and get some Semper Fidelis.
And thank you so much for the support, and hopefully they will have a very safe time and also give some to the Iranians as well. But all the folks I know in the armed forces, some people are going to be like, those are our boys! They're really proud to do their part against the enemies of the United States, including Iran. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dylan Spearman. And thank you very much, Dylan, for that $5 support. And he did not leave a comment, though, but we appreciate you very much, Dylan, for helping to keep the channel running with that support. We also have a 5 from Hoodoo, Texas. And Hoodoo said, a couple of senators out there have filed a resolution to block hostilities against Iran unless authorized by a congressional declaration of war.
I've heard about that. That was also brought up with the whole Venezuela thing, but if it goes like Venezuela, that probably will not pass, and it will once again be up to the War Powers Resolution Act on how this would go, which is well within the president's authority to start a war, basically, at this point, without a declaration of war, and has been for the past 70 years. And also, I gotta say this, because this is something that I find really interesting here. I find it very hard how politics works these days. It's just mind-bending to me how it works. Because whenever a Ukrainian, like a Ukrainian child or an innocent woman or a man who's getting home from work or going to school or something, they get hit by a Russian missile or a bomb and they get killed in the streets, everyone from the left is crying about how that's an absolute tragedy and there needs to be justice. But then when 30,000 and 40,000 people are gunned down in Iran, now because the president is not of their political party, if we're going to go in on that or the nuclear topic or anything, now it's a completely illegal thing to do anything to Iran, although they're calling for military intervention in Ukraine 24/7. And it's the opposite the other way around. So Republicans will act like supporting Ukraine is just akin to heresy and high crimes against humanity, although innocent are being slaughtered and killed and genocide by the Russians basically every day up there. But then when it comes to the Iranians mowing down about 30,000 people, now it's time to see justice. It makes no sense, because if you thought about it from realistic perspective where you just took the same approach on both of them, the loss of innocent lives due to tyrannical or absolutely extremist governments like Russia and Iran are both reprehensible, and there should be some sort of response by the United States on that point. But depending on what political party, you basically just get, I like this war because of reasons, and I don't like this war because of arbitrary reasons. Like, it's the same for both groups. And that's also why, folks, I can't get into the whole political thing here and be like, oh, I'm all for the right or the left, because they don't make any sense. Like, when you really look at it like that, it's like, so the massacres of civilians in Europe is unacceptable to the Democrats, completely fine in Iran, but to the Republicans, the massacring of Ukrainians in Europe is completely fine, but the massacres of Iranians is unacceptable. And it's just completely arbitrary moral policies depending on who's dying where and a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't even matter. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, moving on to our next one here is going to go to Jason Curling, who put in a 5. And thank you, Jason, as well. He said, do you think Iran mini-subs will be a problem with blocking the strait so oil tankers can't cross?
Yeah, that definitely could be likely. We could see that. And so I do thank you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Oh,
what?
It was lagging there for a second. I thought you were gone, but you're back though. But anyways, jumping into our next one, this one goes to Jamali Hamilton, who put in a 5. He said, hello there. He said, I saw some leaked images that Ukraine might be testing a UH-1Y Venom in Ukraine. Now, no confirmation, but cool if true.
And that's interesting. I actually hadn't heard of that myself, but I'll try and look into that and see if that's the case. That'll be very interesting to know. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Fishers of Men, who puts in a 5. He said, are you aware of the capabilities of the X-37B? And Iran has a successful space program and has placed several satellites with unknown payloads into orbit.
Yes, the X-37B is an integral part of the Space Force's orbital warfare strategy and doctrine, and is one of our only autonomous space vehicles that we know of in the public. Really cool sort of a system. I can't really go into it a lot because I actually don't really know a great deal about it, rather than it's used in orbital warfare, and it has a complement of arms and other sorts of systems within the payload bay of the X-37B that can generally tinker with or even literally yeet satellites out of orbit if it wanted to. Really cool sort of a craft, really. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And look at that, Matthew. This thing is getting down to an approach for one of the airports of Dubai, so it is definitely Dubai.
Man, it's getting down.
Man, turn down for what?
This is not a robbery.
Well, with the Russians showing, give us all your money. Man, it's like we're broke as hell. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jesusium, who puts in a 5. He said, I come for the news, but I stay for the random historical nerding out. Always a treat, LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying it. Sometimes we wonder if people enjoy it. Some people say, some people might not. Some others say that they really do enjoy it. And I thank you so much for enjoying it, because I love to go down deep historic rabbit holes. I find them wildly interesting to recount just because of the neatness of the information. And I love to know that there's also other people out there who are deeply fond of history, much like I am, and love to hear the intricate details of it. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 5. And he said, in 2019, I built a custom AMD, I think I meant to say Threadripper PC with 2 GPUs for a company that used drones and map terrain data similar to what you see in Google Earth. Now, that is something right there. Honestly, that sounds like a hell of a PC. That sounds like something that could run some games on it pretty smoothly right there, I must say. But that's very nice, very nice. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for supporting that. Is really cool to hear about, actually. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tulsa, who said, what time is the doomsday clock at now? And thank you both for the great work, Enforcers, and LT, LSA, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and long live the Spring Army. And I think the doomsday clock is the closest to midnight it's ever been right now. But I gotta say, the doomsday clock's metric for that these days is a lot different than it was when it was originally created. When it was originally created, the doomsday clock was how close we were to a nuclear war. Nowadays, it factors in basically politics, like whoever's in charge, you know, so there's kind of like, you know, it's like if you're from a certain political leaning, it dings you a couple of points, basically just from that. And then it also considers pollution, climate change, war, just general warfare around the world, droughts. I mean, it literally takes in everything to account nearly these days, which makes the sort of number a lot more arbitrary, to be entirely honest, than it was back in the day when it was just measuring one thing, which was the inevitability of nuclear war. They ran into a crisis, funnily enough, when the Soviet Union collapsed at the doomsday clock foundation of what the hell do they do now that there isn't going to be a nuclear war? So then that's when they moved on to basically everything else. So the doomsday clock of today really isn't like it was of old, and that's why I don't really count it to be an accurate source compared to its entire lifespan, because the metrics that it measures to get that time on the clock has changed so drastically and is taking in so many different factors now. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Vincent Seabright. And thank you very much, Vincent, for that support, and we do appreciate it. And we also had two from Bruce Lee, and Bruce said, Iran going to see how wild the Wild West can be. LSA.
And that is, I believe that is the Morse code message, right?
Huh?
That was the Morse code message, right?
No, that was the super chat.
I'm not gonna lie, that was really close to the Morse code message. That I was like, I think that might have been it. I was like, I don't know, but I do thank you for support, and I guess you could say that it definitely, they definitely will learn how Wild West is going to be. I guess. So a big thanks to you for the support on the channel. Keep on running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
That blew my mind for a minute there, but this one goes to Django, who puts in a 2, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. We also have a 2 from Plazoth and James Hughes, who each put in $2 supports, and we appreciate all 3 of you very much for supporting the channel. And we also have a 2 from Hoodoo, Texas, who said, did Britain's betrayal upset the U.S. timetable?
May have. I don't think so, though, because Diego Garcia is a pretty far ways away from Iran. Let me switch this back to a flat map. There we go. So Diego Garcia is a pretty far ways away from the Islamic Republic of Iran. So going, say, into Iran, that was a distance of about 3,000 miles. And if we're talking in that sort of a metric, they can't support high-tempo air operations from there. Diego Garcia probably would have supported, say, B-52s firing standoff weapons at Iran, or B-2 bombers conducting bombing operations on Iran from there, but there would have been no way to conduct high-tempo air operations from a 3,000-mile distance, because that's literally the distance from, I believe it's Los Angeles to New York almost, and you couldn't really conduct air operations on a regular basis, having to fly an aircraft, well, actually, that's even farther, all the way from Los Angeles to New York, bombing whatever the target is, and then flying all the way back. That would just be too much for normal combat aircraft to do. Bombers could do it, but not normal multi-roles. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from the Buckeye history guy, and thank you very much for the support. He said he bets that Toyota is loving all this news.
Oh, you know it. Like, oh, you know. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said YouTube wouldn't let me send my melon joke, so ...
Well, I guess that is what it is. But thanks to you for the support on the channel to keep running, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2. And Bruce said, do A-10s, are they back on the discussion menu? And
not quite. Like, but they do make for a good thumbnail, though. I could say that. The thumbnail is unequivocally bussin' tonight. But sadly, they're not really back up for discussion. But the big thanks to you for support. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a $2 support from Bruce Lee once again. He said perhaps they shouldn't have used 1.21 gigawatts.
Perhaps they shouldn't have. Maybe they shouldn't have. And so big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that it's addressed that well. And also Robin Stevenson just said, guys, Crete is much closer to Iran, right? Yes, you are right. Yeah, that's actually correct. Let me show you. From Chania Air Base right here, or Chania Airfield, it's only 1,300 miles. So it's about a third of the distance from Crete to Iran than it is from Diego Garcia to Iran. So in terms of high-tempo air operations, Crete's a great place to be. in terms of high tempo air operations from Diego Garcia, a lot of your time, 300% extra time is being spent just flying to Iran and back than it would be, say, from a place like Crete or elsewhere in the Middle East. So generally, yes, you are absolutely correct. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said Russian window shopping for melons.
Melons? I tell you, those melons are scaring people. Like the Russians say, oh, look at that. Why would you look at that? It's on final approach, runway. I wonder what runway that. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's take a little look here. It's landing up here at Sharjah, huh? Let's see. Final approach, runway 30, cleared to land. Look at that. Holy moly. Heavens to Betsy. They're landing.
Belay that order, Captain. Turn them around and head them back to Moscow.
Huh? Man, the Russians.
Yeah, let us land on the runway. We won't take a no for an answer. Let us down.
Man, you know, the pilots come out like, oh, hold up, man. I gotta go get this. Man, bro, when the pilots are waiting for everyone to load, they're gonna be looking like this out there. Do you have a spare ruble to give me? I need to go to the liquor store. Like, it's like, man, it's like, I'd be
They
scared.
didn't buy a police Lamborghini and we'll load it in the back. No questions asked.
Man, I tell you, man. This is what I imagine the Russian pilots of the Ministry for Emergency Situations look like. Adidas tracksuits, the flat caps, the bottles, the Simicki, and the cigarettes. Like, that's what I would imagine as your average Russian Ministry of Foreign Situations or Emergency Situations pilot. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Wolf and Beer. They said massive, excuse me, by the way. He said massive explosion at Iran's port Bandar Abbas, and the plane's going to Bandar Abbas.
Actually, it's not. It's going to Sharjah in the UAE. So we all ended up being wrong. I thought it was going to Bandar Abbas. I thought it was going to Bushehr. Surprise, surprise, it's the UAE, actually. So
See, I was just running flak. That's all. I knew it was heading to Dubai the whole time. I knew it was heading there. I was just running flak because trying to maintain OPSEC here.
Hold up, man. Hold up. I gotta do it. You see, the Iranians, they're sending their aircraft to the Russian Federation, and then the Russian Federation is sending their aircraft back because they're going to put hummus up there. Oh man.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Don't put me in the Marriott. Don't put me in the Marriott. Put me in the Holiday Inn Express.
See?
They put me in the Ramada.
And then they blew up the Intercontinental. So, see, what did I tell you? What it's like, oh man, it's just so sad to hear that. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. Like that's.
And our next one goes to Venom Guy, who puts in a 5. He said, "I think the U.S. will use American and AZBJ Azerbaijan airspace to attack Tehran from the north. I also think Iran could possibly have a working nuke."
I don't think they have a working nuke, for one. I would have to disagree on that. I don't think they have one, but of course, I could be wrong. But outside of that, I do agree with you. I think the U.S. is going to be using Azerbaijani airspace at a bare minimum because we do know of some MC-130J Commando 2s that are in Baku at the moment and have not left. So it seems as though there is some kind of an operation kind of being planned from Azerbaijan, but we'll have to see. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And what's going on here? Well, our stream is perfectly fine on OBS. I mean, it's running just fine.
Your stuff's busted over there?
No, my stuff isn't busted. It's a YouTube issue. I mean, OBS is literally plugging on through just fine. I mean, it's normal as usual. I think some people are just saying that sometimes. I just think some people say it, to say it. They just refresh the stream, folks. Refresh it. Be kind and refresh the stream. It fixes all of your issues, and it's refreshing. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said, "There's also hell in Michigan. It freezes over quite a bit."
Isn't that funny when hell freezes over? That's a good one. Big thanks to you for the support. And we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, you can refresh yourself on your tab. If you refresh the screen, it should fix the audio issues a little bit, hopefully. But anyways, jumping into our next one, this one goes to Junior McLennan, who puts in a 1. And thank you very much for that support. And he did not leave a comment, but thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say that it's a wonderful thing to know that folks like you help this channel to keep on running. And let's see. I see everyone's saying that refreshing it fixed it, so it looks like it's a YouTube server issue. Ha! It's not a problem on my computer every time something happens, man. Like, it's not a problem with my tech every single time. Sometimes it's a server issue on YouTube's end. Like, I can't control it. Like OBS is doing perfectly fine. OBS is picking my audio up, and I'm literally looking at it right now, and it's picking up every bit of my audio. And when you talk...
Wait a second. I just noticed something. If the audio is not working and the people couldn't hear the audio, and I verbally said refresh and it'll fix it,
how
are
did they
people
know
responding and saying that worked for me?
Wait
That's a second here. Bad rabbit or bad whatever? Like, what was his name? Bad.
They say I have many girlfriends. Hey, they say I have many girlfriends. Auntie asked me why I had so many girlfriends. Because I take them to the VIP! To the VIP! Oh, man, dude, I wish we could get that clip of the AI translated to English thing. That was hilarious. That was funny as hell, man. To the VIP! To the VIP! But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
Our next one goes to DWRB, who puts in a 5. He said, do you think this weekend, or has the U.S. moved to weekday strikes and have a chicken on me in LSA?
You know, we've been kidding around that they're going to bomb Iran in the middle of the week, so that way they are not that predictable. They might, I mean, you know, they might. I would have to say that at this point, a strike could literally happen at any minute. I would generally lean towards the idea it's going to happen over a weekend, because it's not like Iran's going to be able to do anything even if they knew the strikes were coming. I mean, they're basically helpless. They were helpless against the Israelis. Imagine what's going to happen against us with about 4 times the firepower. There's no chance for them. So that's what I'm thinking, but, you know, we might see that it might happen in the weekdays. It's not out of the question. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Gong, who puts in a 2. It says, I love what you guys do from some Aussie bloke.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying what we do from some Aussie bloke. And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we love to know that our viewers in Australia really do enjoy the show because we love Australia. Really cool country. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And jumping into our Morse code decoders, it is now time to get our live chats and Morse code decoders. We had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Airbug, Garbo, Heroic Fluffins, Coach Cover, Terry, Cyan, Brian, Blairstown. They said the Morse says Iran is facing down a war and another open revolt all on the same time. Have fun. LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. That was the Morse code message. Unlike my little mix-up last night. Whoops. But beyond that, I got to congratulate y'all greatly on getting that correct. It's truly an amazing and profound thing to know that we were able to say that y'all were able to take that Morse code message to the VIP. To the VIP. And I got to say that we're always proud that the Lee Springer Signal Corps is able to get that Morse code message correct time and time again. So with that, humongous congrats to y'all once again. And with that, we have one last super chat, which is from Bruce Lee LSA, who threw in a 2. And he said, here's a 2 there, there's a 2, everywhere, a 2 weeks. LSA. Hitting right where it hurts. The 2 weeks crap. but anyways, with that, humongous thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are going to be getting 3 live chat questions because we are unfortunately over time. So with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Grippin, who said, what are the odds that the TELs are getting attacked in the first wave of strikes to cripple the Iranian capacity to counterattack?
It's pretty decent. Like, I would say that that's probably a pretty decent chance, especially if there's somewhere where they're out in the open and can easily be hit. They probably will be. So I would say pretty decent chances. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to In Hansen, who said, maybe Iran honestly thinks the protesters are foreign agitators and is trying to keep them out, LOL?
It could be possible. Maybe, but I would feel like this probably may not be the case. We'll have to see, though. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we actually have one last super chat here before we get to our final question of the night, which is from D Hop, who threw in the 2 and said, where do you think U.S. will hit first? Well, we can't get into particular details there, but I can tell you that air defenses and Air Force installations, along with the Iranian Navy and also Iranian transport erector launchers, are probably all going to be high priority targets for the first wave of strikes. But getting any further into details from there would generally be an operational security thing. And loose lips sink ships. But I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again. And Matthew, heavens, we have another super chat from Bruce Lee, LSA. He threw in another one, a 2. He said, shush, take my quack. Hey, oh, we got the soundbite. That was sick. But beyond that, a big thanks to you for support, Bruce Lee, and I guess that is the quack. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Verig, who said, do y'all think a full-scale operation can synchronize across such a large area? Question for the both of you. And
Absolutely.
I would say yes. I would say it's absolutely the case. They will have to be synchronized because it's going to be a joint operation, most likely between Israel, the United States, and perhaps other coalition forces that are going to be conducting offensive operations against Iran. So they must be synchronized, and it's totally viable. There are modern systems that are used, by the way. It's not simply like word of mouth. There are what's known as battlefield management systems, which have AI integrated into them in the modern day, which allow them to track all the assets in one place. They can track every single fighter jet in one software, including live views from everything. It's very advanced. So synchronizing it is not as hard as it looks. It's actually gotten a lot easier thanks to that technology. So they can definitely pull that off. But Enforcer, what say you?
They can definitely synchronize over such a wide front. We actually did that during the Gulf War and the invasion of Iraq in 2003 to an even far larger degree than what we're seeing now, and also had combined arms at play with the naval, air, and ground forces. So it's not out of the question at all that we can conduct a perfectly synchronized operation on multiple ends with even multiple countries involved on Iran. So a humongous thanks to you for asking a really good question. I hope that does address that well. And a humongous thanks to everyone else for watching so far tonight. We have reached the end of tonight's stream, actually. Y'all have made it through an entire 3 hours and 40 minutes of the Enforcer show. And I got to thank you all so much once again for enjoying the show tonight. We had a peak viewership of 24.5 thousand people who were here over the course of the night. And we've also had 231,000 people watch this stream before it ended. We've always got to say that we're entirely honored and appreciative of so many of y'all watching this channel every day and considering it to be your primary source of news. I also have to give a huge thanks to the 1,000 people who subscribed today, one over Matthew's really well-made video, and also over the stream. This has been quite a day for news, and we thank you all so much once again for watching, and we hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world, and to also run our Sunday night fundraiser. Additionally, folks, most importantly, I will be the one making the short war video tomorrow, but from this point on, if anything happens with Iran, we will be going live immediately. And when I mean anything happening with Iran, not everything, it's just if we go to war with Iran and start bombing them, we will immediately be going live to cover those developments. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A huge thanks to all of y'all once again for watching, and we will see you all then. So with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, long live the Lee Spring Army, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, and long live the Republic.
And also a big shout out to Nick and Bruce for putting in each a $2 support, and we appreciate both of you very much for that. But in the meantime, a big shout out to the 230,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream, a whopping stream tonight. And we appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source, and we will see you all tomorrow. It'll be a Sunday. We'll see what happens tomorrow on Sunday. It could be anything, but we will be on high alert from this point forward because it's coming, and it's going to be here soon. So we'll be here to cover it when it does happen, to go live instantly when that breaks out. And thank you all once again for being here tonight. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.